Chapter 597. This unforeseen event did not affect Luo Nan's determination to carry out his plan. He checked his energy reserves one last time and confirmed that he could complete a one-way charge under the intense killing. Then he controlled the combat machine to take large strides and attack in a straight line. At the same time, black smoke that was near nothingness flowed through the gaps between the rock and soil. It was Mo Luan moving stealthily underground. With Luo Nan drawing its attention, it effectively avoided the eyes and ears of the vast majority of the defenders. It rapidly approached the target area. And at this time, from the perspective of the electromagnetic vanguard number 1, it could faintly see an unceasingly approaching gray line ahead. It was a skirmish line formed by several dozen mutants similar to plague dogs. This was just a small unit. Behind this skirmish line, on the two flanks, and even behind the electromagnetic vanguard number 1, there were already threats accumulating. The mutants under the control of the Vulcan ants are manifesting more and more clearly in terms of organization and sociality. The conclusion of a certain summary flashed through Luo Nan's mind. It echoed with this phenomenon, but it did not leave a trace in Luo Nan's mind. He still controlled the Gauss rifle module to a single-shot state. He did not seek to block the mutants' assault momentum. He just followed the most precise and efficient method to kill them one by one. This feeling was quite familiar. It was like playing a more realistic Frost River reality game. But what was different from the game was that every time he made a move, the metal block within his head armor would always transmit sets of electrical signals. These were the transliterations of the seed imprint's various judgment reactions. These signals gave the combat machine's computing system a set of judgment options, and they were directly used on Luo Nan's mental plane. They gave him a highly optimized reference plan. As an extraordinary, or more accurately speaking, as the wilderness hunter, Jean Tong, how would he react when faced with this kind of ever-changing situation? The hissing sound of wind brushed in from the flank. A long ochre-red snake, nearly the same color as the surrounding volcanic rocks, leaped up from the ground with its upper body. It clearly wanted to coil around the left arm module that spat out death bullets. But what welcomed it was a blade light that came from an even trickier angle. The long ochre-red snake was cut in half by a single blade strike. The crackling electricity extinguished the life force of the parasitic Vulcan ant within its body at the same time. It was straightforward and efficient. At least 70% of the credit for this blade was due to the stress response of the seed imprint. Luo Nan was more like a guide. The feedback from the imprint of the Jean Tong seed grew stronger and stronger over the course of a few days. It grew faster and faster, giving Luo Nan quite good pointers and benefits. But this was not enough, far from enough. And that group of people didn't have enough, right? Number 1 fired another shot, shattering a rock a few hundred meters away. Apart from the shattered stone shards, parts of the rock exploded all over the place. That's enough. At the forward supply base of Spring City's western defense line, Meng Tu couldn't help but slap the table. In the wilderness, be it humans or machines, they are all fucking lawless. Hurry up, activate the next set of backup equipment. As a senior officer of the Coastal Defense Force, Meng Tu was assigned a mission to relieve his boredom. It was supposed to be a leisure job similar to traveling, but now it seemed that his unreliable boss was the one who pushed the blame to him. His heart was filled with irritation. He nearly wanted to rip off the chain of discipline, but his many years of military discipline made him suppress this impulse. His voice only grew a bit coarser. You still haven't found out the origins of this X2. If you want to investigate here, don't overlook the SCA's side. The officer next to him was the commander of this forward supply base, Major Gua. It was hard not to feel a bit awkward being overridden. But the disparity in military rank, the difference between the city defense force and the field army, and especially the distance between burners and normal people, made it impossible for him to say anything. He could only try to raise his presence. This Axe, too, has clearly undergone major modifications. With such a degree of modification and the methods of those rats of the black market, it's unlikely that we'll be able to find anything. Perhaps we can consider it from the perspective of a highly destructive electromagnetic weapon. Meng Tu shook his head. It's not a simple electromagnetic weapon. That's right. Its modifications are very extreme. I'm saying that it's not just an electromagnetic weapon. Have you ever seen an electromagnetic rifle that can blast apart a mutant with a body of steel in one shot? Perhaps it uses special ammunition. If the density and weight of the ammunition exceeds. But there's no way to explain the intense combustion in the latter half. Speaking of which, Major Gua, the Deep Blue Walkers in Spring City don't have a high conversion rate. Yes. Then I suggest that you find an opportunity to attend a short-term training class in the near future and gain a deeper understanding of the combat methods of the Deep Blue Walkers. It had to be said that Meng Tu wasn't Major Gua's direct superior. This statement sounded extremely harsh, but Major Gua had a good temper. At the very least, he didn't show any anger on the surface. He even humbly asked for guidance. What Senior Colonel Meng means is that this modification is somewhat similar to the Deep Blue Walkers. It's not a modification. It's a technique. This kind of enchantment technique can pour the special power of the format of fire into the ammunition of firearms. I really like using this move, but it's very difficult to accomplish alone. In order to achieve this, one must have extremely high attainments in the field of formatting. Among the people I know, Major General Tian Bang is one of them. There's also that person from the He family. Meng Tu shook his head. You've digressed. What I mean is that this isn't just a matter of military equipment modification. It involves extraordinary power. It's not the format of fire, but an extraordinary power of electromagnetism. But this is clearly a robot. A robot. In the current world, all kinds of demons and ghosts have appeared. At this point, he turned his head to ask the intelligence officer beside him. I asked you to look for a match with the SCA. Have there been any results? The intelligence officer handed over a flexible screen. On it was a list that had just been pulled out. Meng Tu received it, swept his eyes over it, and spat. Is the SCA waiting for the new year? Even that damn Jean Tong can be listed first. Meng Tu looked at the list and couldn't find anything. But because of Jean Tong, he thought of that even more troublesome fellow. His heart grew increasingly irritated, and he slammed the table once more. It was at this time that the adjutant came over to inform him. There's a long-distance meeting at command in 5 minutes. It requires you, Professor Wu, and Professor Ding to participate. The meeting place is in the base's 4th conference room. Meeting all day long. Meng Tu threw the flexible screen on the table and stormed out. Inside the room, Major Gua shrugged his shoulders. He was about to relax his posture when he saw Meng Tu turn around and return. Once the backup surveillance is activated, immediately synchronize the relevant footage to my place. Major Gua reflexively stood at attention. Understood. Only then did Meng Tu leave. It took him a minute to reach the 4th conference room. He had just sat down, and before he even had a drink of water to calm himself down, 2 gray-haired old men came over together. He stood up and greeted them. Professor Wu, Professor Ding. Professor Wu Zunliang, who was in his 90s, still had a ruddy complexion. Even after nearly a month in the wilderness, his voice hadn't lowered at all. When he saw Meng Tu, he asked directly. The project team's sampling equipment went out of control, and there was a combat robot at the scene of the incident. Did you send it there? Can you guarantee that the sampling results will be back by today? Helpless, Meng Tu could only explain, we're still verifying the situation at the scene. Also, we haven't determined the origin of that combat robot. As he spoke, a signal came from Major Gua's side, synchronizing the footage collected by the 3rd surveillance equipment. Meng Tu thought for a moment, then simply set it to projection mode and reported the situation to the two old professors. Before he could say more than 2 words, Wu Zunliang saw the NCOX-2 robot charging forward in a straight line on the projection. He couldn't help but slap the table. Holy sh*T. This is amazing, what a beautiful kill. Beside him, Professor Ding Jiying, who was much more elegant and quiet, frowned. This will cause new variables to the aberrant ecology near the volcanic area, and the data that is currently being collected will be a mess again. Wu Zunliang scoffed at this statement. Aberrants are a mess to begin with. You're daydreaming if you want to do static research. Speaking of which, old Ding, your mindset should change. In the past, you worked on the ecosphere for research and protection, but now, do you still want to live together with these things? Screw you, you're the one living together. Hee, don't be fooled by our old pan's wrinkled face. He's still cuter than these things. I've recorded this. Shall we play it for Sister Pan to hear later? Meng Tu could only sigh in his heart as the two leading ecobiologists bickered here. Fortunately, the remote conference soon began. Basically, it was still according to the established routine. They first reported the progress of all parties, then asked questions and found solutions. Meng Tu didn't turn off the projection. He was prepared to report the latest situation to the command center later. However, the main characters now were still the two old professors. There were meetings every day, but the problems wouldn't be refreshed every day. Professor Wu Zunliang turned around and interrogated the contact person. Right now, we've set up a grassroots team here in Spring City. Don't laugh, old Ding and I are both top-notch, and the students under us aren't idiots either. But right now, we don't even have the basic experimental conditions. Don't talk about the aberrant rebellion. I know that the wilderness laboratory here suffered heavy losses last year, but we can't just hole up in the supply base and do research, right? Do we make a round trip of nearly 1,000 kilometers every day just for the sake of parkour in the wilderness? The contact person coughed. Professor Wu, I was just about to report to you about the laboratory. We've already found a pretty good location with ready-made experimental sites and equipment. Before that, please allow me to introduce everyone to the project team's partner, Mr. Luo. At this moment, Professor Wu Zunliang noticed that there was an unfamiliar fellow who had been online the entire time but hadn't spoken. This person's face was rather thin, and the lines of muscle on his cheeks were rather heavy. He appeared rather stern and grave. Unlike the contact person who was used to speaking in a bureaucratic manner, this Mr. Luo wasn't one to beat around the bush. He went straight to the point. My company has a wilderness laboratory under its name. It was urgently closed during last year's riot and was isolated from the outside world. The damage it suffered wasn't that great. This laboratory is approximately 150 kilometers away from the target volcanic area. It's already a relatively forward position. If Professor Wu, Professor Ding. Wu Zunliang was a bit baffled. This Mr. Luo's way of addressing him was clearly different from the way old Ding beside him addressed him. Wu Zunliang was a straightforward person, and if there was a question, he would ask, "You know me?" Mr. Luo laughed when he heard this. His originally stern face became rather warm and intimate at this moment. Professor Wu, I'm a graduate of Acumen College 77's Biological Sciences Department. I once wanted to take the exam to become your doctoral student. I went to visit you with senior sister Qingwen and even ate at your place. Bang! Wu Zunliang slapped the table in realization. I remember you. You and Qingwen were in the same orphanage. Later on, you went with her to the wilderness. Ha! Before he even finished speaking, the remote communication screen began to shake incessantly. The conference room was only separated by a thread, but it also began to shake violently. The teacups on the table were knocked over with tinkling sounds. Meng Tu suddenly stood up and supported two old professors at the same time. He roared through the communicator. Report the situation. Volcanic activity has been detected. There's also an earthquake. Look over there. Professor Ding pointed at the projection that still hadn't disappeared. The Vulcan ants' defensive line has shrunk substantially. They're all retreating. Chapter 598. A ferocious flame-bellied monitor lizard was half lying on the ground. Even so, it was still as tall as a person. Below its belly was the slowly flowing lava. Not only did the lava of nearly 1,000 degrees not destroy its limbs, but it also provided it with the energy to persist. This was a very suitable battlefield for the flame-bellied monitor lizard. As far as the eye could see, dark red lava could be seen everywhere. Some of it flowed down the hill, and some simply gushed out between the heavily cracked ground. Although it was not as powerful as an explosive eruption, the scene of the earth cracking everywhere, as if it could completely collapse at any time, was equally thrilling. In a similar environment, the flame-bellied monitor lizard had killed countless invaders, and its total size could even fill the crater behind it. Almost all of its prey could not resist the fire poison it sprayed, and it could not resist the destructive lava it controlled. But at this moment, before it could cause any fatal damage to the metal creation in front of it, its tail and one of its forelimbs had been cut off, and it had lost most of its mobility. The lava fire intertwined with the gray skylight, but it was difficult to illuminate the specially treated armor coating, as if there was always a blurry dark domain. This grayish-black metal creation was only about 20 meters away from it. In the past, it could have pounced, but now it could only desperately accumulate strength, use the special abdomen of the mutated evolution to absorb the heat of the lava, and then open its mouth wide, buzz. The heavy alloyed javelin, carrying lightning, entered the mouth of the flame-bellied monitor lizard, and a small part of it penetrated its back. It exploded like a high-explosive bomb, magma splattered everywhere, and scales flew everywhere. Immediately, blazing electric flames shot out from the mouth, eye sockets, wounds, and even the cracks in the outer skin of the scale armor. The 2-ton body of the flame-bellied monitor lizard shrank in the blink of an eye. Its special body structure, which had evolved from the mutation, was also completely destroyed by this round of damage. The high temperature of the lava was finally revealed at this moment, and a small part of the body of the giant lizard was swallowed in a breath. However, in the burning flames of the giant lizard, there was still a blood-colored light. Electromagnetic Vanguard 1 silently stepped forward, stepping on the flat head of the flame-bellied monitor lizard, and also on the slowly flowing magma, walking to the top of the hill. The modified body based on the Sergeant X-2 model did not have the ability to resist the lava for a long time. However, when the high-temperature lava tried to devour the metal leg, it was repelled by an invisible force and slowly moved away. Number 1 crossed the line of defense of the giant fire-bellied lizards and set foot on the top of the erupting volcano. Now, the volcanic area that appeared in the optical imaging system was a real volcanic area. Within a radius of several hundred square kilometers, at least 70 to 80% of the craters were emitting thick smoke and lava. Dark red lines of fire crisscrossed the ground, cutting the area into pieces. Luo Nan had actually completed the goal of the first stage after killing the flame-belly monitor lizard. Although the Guardians, who had retreated under the control of the Vulcan ants, had already gathered in the central area and rebuilt the defensive line, most of them were unable to burrow underground and bathe in the lava to enter the core area. Number 1 could do it. Under Luo Nan's control, this combat machine stepped directly into the boiling pool of lava under the protection of a powerful magnetic shield. Of course, it was just passing by. Soon, it locked onto a certain gap in the inner wall of the volcano. It blasted apart a chunk of rock that had just been congealed and piled up not too long ago, revealing a narrow crack illuminated by the lava. Mo Luo's civil engineering isn't bad. What should be praised was that Luo Nan was able to utilize the terrain to the greatest limit with his meticulous senses and reconnaissance over the past few days. He was able to open up a subway line to bypass the congestion on the surface. Number 1 was not the only passerby in this narrow passageway. The lava was like a flowing stream beneath its feet, extending even further into the crack. The densely packed volcan ants were lined up in rows within the hissing flowing lava. They borrowed the power of the lava to move faster. Their speed was not much slower than a normal person's walking speed. The volcan ants did not possess complete individual thinking, but they possessed a powerful group consciousness. Luo Nan could feel the faint evil intent that came from the nothingness, but this squad of volcan ants was still restrained by a high degree of discipline. They ignored the damage caused by the stomp of the combat machine and continued to flow back to the core area. The formation of the ant colony had yet to end when a buzzing sound assaulted them from within the dust-filled air. It was as if a swarm of locusts had passed through. A dark red cloud of blood suddenly gushed out from the crevice to the side. There were hundreds of thousands of winged volcan ants. They did not have the ability to fly long distances, but they were still able to advance forward at a faster speed within this narrow passageway. This speed was just about the same as Number 1's advancing speed. Number 1 was submerged within the cloud of blood as expected. Lava and the cloud of blood extended forward within the long and narrow crevice. There was a certain section in the middle that flickered with electricity and fire irregularly. This was the phenomenon formed by the electromagnetic shield repelling and killing the surrounding volcan ants. The surroundings were densely packed with flying ants, and their feet were even stepping on the lava. They were just remote-controlled combat machines. They were not here in person. Otherwise, Luo Nan could not guarantee that he would be able to maintain a calm state of mind. They were both volcan ants. They crawled within the lava and flew within the crevice, but there was a large difference in their body shape and body structure. But this was not strange in a volcanic area. According to Luo Nan's reconnaissance over the past 2 days, there were hundreds and thousands of volcan ant nests within a radius of 200 kilometers. They were widely distributed, and the direction of mutation evolution was a bit different within every nest. And since the lifespan of volcan ants was short, they replaced each other extremely quickly. Therefore, they were able to rapidly form differences in a short amount of time. This was simply a large-scale laboratory for genetic mutation. The branches of this laboratory in the wilderness had their own areas of activity. They were very territorial, and sometimes they would even kill each other. But they all had the same origin. They all belonged to one. The mutant nest. There was a direct relationship of subordination between the headquarters and the branches. Now that headquarters was in trouble, the entire branch had returned to assist. Luo Nan only had a few short days of observation. He did not know what these volcan ants would do when they gathered together. But he didn't want to add more variables to his plan, so he controlled Number 1 to speed up. The frequency of lightning flashing clearly increased within the blood cloud that pervaded the crevice. A series of crackling explosions rang out. Number 1's forward speed had already increased by 3 times, and the strength of the electromagnetic shield had increased correspondingly. This was to defend against the underground guardian that could come out at any time. The electromagnetic shield was an advanced technology that had yet to be realized by Earth's technology. It was formed from the integration of the seed imprint that was implanted into the combat machinery. Thus, a powerful electromagnetic field domain was formed with electromagnetic vanguard as the fulcrum. The domain pervaded the surroundings, and it could be retracted and released at will. This was the embryonic form of Jean Tong's extraordinary domain. Being able to realize this kind of effect proved that the potential of the seed imprint had been excavated to a new level. And under this stimulation, the corresponding information within the divine binding hoop and the virtual brain system was activated one after another. They provided Luo Nan with even more detailed and thorough application technology. Of course, the carriers of these application technologies were all indecipherable hieroglyphs. Luo Nan relied on the even more marvelous I word to decipher a portion of the hieroglyphs with great difficulty. The divine binding hoop was the sole spoil of war from killing Jin Tong. Presumably, it had caused quite a bit of trouble for its previous owner. It had to be said that Jin Tong was truly a genius for being able to break into the extraordinary realm under these circumstances. High-level techniques required high-level consumption. 2,000 kilometers away in the underground laboratory of gear, Luo Nan regulated his breathing in the simulation chamber to adapt to the ever-increasing pressure. Currently, the internal energy and transmission system of the electromagnetic Vanguard 1 had already retreated to a secondary position in the driving force. The main source of power came from the remote interference of Luo Nan's soul strength. Just the electromagnetic shield alone consumed an astronomical amount of energy. In addition, there was also the natural consumption of long-range interference. Even with Luo Nan's soul strength reserves, it was still quite strenuous. Fortunately, strands of marvelous energy seeped over from the depths of the void as Luo Nan approached the core region. The energy grew clearer and stronger. Good. Very good. Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief. This supplement was nothing compared to the overall consumption, but it was an extremely positive feedback. There was no energy in this world that was like water without a source or a tree without roots. There was bound to be a source and a process of transformation. Luo Nan was fully aware of the entire process. His heart was all the more certain and excited. Number 1's speed increased once more. Not only was it advancing towards its predetermined target, it was also tracing back to the source of the energy transformation. After advancing another 10 kilometers or so, Number 1 had already swapped out 2 passageways in the ground. One of these passageways was a shortcut that had just been created due to the earthquake. It was precisely because of this timely change that it was able to evade the even crazier attacks and interception of the Guardians. Even so, Number 1's left arm was scorched and deformed by a tyrannical mutant that could transform into lava. A large chunk of the armor on its chest was lifted off, exposing the deformed components within. As for the narrow passageway behind it, a layer of burnt ashes had already filled the entire passageway. The ashes slowly rolled along with the flowing lava. Right now, there was a vertical distance of at least 90 meters between Number 1 and the surface of the earth. The roars of the mutants had disappeared, but the violent upheaval of the earth brought about by the volcano and the earthquake still filled this passageway with noise. In the end, it formed muddy rumbling vibrations. Luo Nan handed over the task of analyzing the ambient sounds to the auxiliary computing system. This was to avoid the topographical changes that could cause destructive damage. As for himself, his attention was completely penetrated into the depths of the surrounding dark void. He probed the abyss region. There, a weak incantation was spiraling and circulating. It continued on without end. This was the music that surged as the energy turbulence of the abyss region passed through the special structural form. As the output gradually stabilized, the incantation grew clearer and clearer. It grew louder and louder. In the end, it was simply like a majestic and even fanatical chorus. Blood. 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 Fire. 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 Chapter 599. Number 1 took 2 more steps forward and suddenly froze. Boom! Flames smashed through the rock wall in front of him, bringing with it a destructive wave of lava heat. In the sudden change of extreme environment, Number 1's perception and computing functions were thrown into chaos for a moment. The metal body was somewhat stiff and out of control, but Luo Nan's mental senses weren't affected. Instead, they followed the fulcrum that was already stationed in this area and spread out. Then Luo Nan saw the spire-like building topple over on the other side of the collapsed rock wall. It crashed into the roaring and boiling lava, extinguishing in the blink of an eye. It wasn't strange for there to be such a building in the underground lava area. In fact, Number 1's body had adapted to the extreme environment. It braved the tide like lava waves and walked to the edge of the collapsed rock wall. Here, the enormous cavern in front of it, as well as the twisted demonic building community within the cavern, only presented a corner of the volcano to number 1. There were at least 10 enormous sealed structures scattered randomly in this enormous cavern with the lava as its base color. They were all made of rock and mud. They were of different sizes and were rather crude. They were connected to each other and to the rock walls of the surrounding mountain by pipes made of the same material. They crisscrossed and crisscrossed. One could see that they were building structures with clear functions at a glance. Perhaps it was the reflection of the lava's radiance, or perhaps it was the material or other factors, but these sealed structures radiated a dark red glow. They seemed to be burning at all times, like enormous torches. They were very eye-catching. The dark red glow that radiated appeared to be flowing without end upon closer inspection. It was like the blood circulation system of an aberration. It didn't stop for a moment. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the temperature was like fire in this volcanic lava environment. But there were tens of millions of fire god ants in this inferno-like building community. They were following the internal and external passageways, shuttling back and forth at high speed. Luo Nan's mental senses were able to detect that the dozen or so sealed structures exposed above the lava were nearly filled to the brim with fire god ants. More and more ants were advancing, one after the other, to the far end of the rock wall. They were even advancing deeper into the depths of the lava. That's right. Similar sealed structures and passageways existed widely in other locations of the mountain and the Earth's crust, beneath the unfathomable depths of the high-temperature lava. They were the ant rooms and ant tunnels built by this enormous colony of fire god ants. All of these structures together formed the entirety of the aberration nest. And this was only the lower part of the aberration nest. According to Luo Nan's probing observations over the past few days, this aberration nest included at least 200 ant rooms and 10 times the number of ant tunnels. There was no obvious pattern to their distribution. Some places were denser, while others were thinner. Overall, they still formed the shape of an inverted pyramid. About a fifth of the lower portion was completely submerged in magma. And that was Luo Nan's final destination, the heart of the entire aberration nest, the queen of the fire god ants. It was also the core of the collective consciousness of the entire fire god ant society. The tremors of the mountain and the ground continued. Number 1 stood at the edge of the cliff for 3 to 5 seconds before another ant chamber was peeled off from the cliff. Together with tens of thousands of fire god ants, it fell heavily into the lava. Most ant chambers were connected to the surrounding mountains and strata. The volcanic activity in this area had probably been too intense, resulting in the collapse of the strata that supported it, exposing the ant chambers inside. From this, it could be seen that the ant chambers of the fire god ants were much sturdier than the surrounding rock strata. But these peculiar creations had lost their supporting foundation, and it was very difficult for them to maintain themselves in this vile environment for long periods of time. Such destructive tremors had the effects of natural disasters like volcanoes and earthquakes. There was also the forceful interference of the energy turbulence in the abyss region on the material plane, adding fuel to the flames. There was also the more direct impact from the depths of the lava. Right now, the lava below was surging with waves. There was no pattern to them at all. It was as if a dozen enormous monsters were fighting and struggling within. So much so that the rock walls below continued to crumble and fall, chiseling larger and larger holes. Under these circumstances, it was very difficult for Number 1's auxiliary computing system to accurately monitor and judge the surrounding environment. It was as good as crippled. If it's crippled, then it's crippled. Number 1 had already completed its basic mission by being able to advance to this area. Luo Nan couldn't count on it to play any role in the future. Luo Nan soon made a decision. He controlled Number 1 to slide down along the rock wall. He used the most direct method to approach the critical area. The crumbling strata presented a very bad concave shape. There were practically no places for Luo Nan to borrow strength from. And in this extreme environment, Number 1's not-so-passable basic design exposed problems. Its external rocket propulsion system was intermittent. It simply relied on the electromagnetic shield to roll down like a rubber ball. As for braking and so on, Luo Nan had to rely on the help of the alloy combat knife. Such a sorry state completely obliterated the valiant appearance of No. 1 from its sharp knife charge in the previous few hours. Luo Nan couldn't care less. He controlled Number 1 to slide down another 40 meters or so. The surrounding air was becoming even more viscous. Enormous noises. Noises that originated from the two directions of the material plane and the abyss region's void had already blasted and kneaded together. They radiated a tyrannical psychic pressure that was distorted and chaotic. An invisible whirlpool of turbulence swept up within the Inferno prison. Right now, Luo Nan could clearly feel the collision and conflict of the two forces within. On one side was the great chorus of blood, 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 fire, fire, fire. It appeared to be fanatical, but in fact, it occupied the dominant position within the abyss region's void. Its energy circulation was extremely strange and miraculous. On the other side was the enormous heat source entrenched in the volcanic strata here. It was in a relatively rough and wild mode of operation, charging back and forth. Although a huge amount of energy was wasted at every moment, in this environment, it was almost as if it was replenished at any time, inexhaustible and inexhaustible. Mo Luan did well. The fire god ants. They really did make the right choice. The conductor of the great chorus was undoubtedly Mo Luan. This puppet that resided within the Blood Soul Temple only had that tyrannical combat instinct left. Even now, he was still able to bring out such a remarkable method of circulation. Even with the powerful enhancement of the Blood Soul Temple, he was worthy of being an expert that was only a step away from transcendence. As for the leading force of the enormous heat source, it was naturally the fire god ant colony. The fire god ant colony's consciousness was quite disciplined. Combined with the enormous ant nest structure that covered the volcanic region, they formed a complete energy circulation and utilization system within an area of nearly 1,000 square kilometers. Even though there were various inefficiencies within, and they were unavoidably restricted by the natural environment, they still possessed inconceivable power due to their enormous base. If they were to contend against the fire god ant head-on, all of the transcendence on Earth, be it physical or mental, would be crushed by the fire god ant. Then there would be nothing for Luo Nan to do, and there would be no plans. All he had to do was pat his ass and get the hell out of here. But today's facts proved that even if one had an overwhelming advantage in strength, one might not necessarily be able to gain the upper hand without the corresponding high-end circulation technique. One might even be able to be used by others. Otherwise, where would the energy Luo Nan was using to replenish himself come from? Right now, Mo Luan seemed to be piloting a floating power generation platform. He was drifting on the vast ocean. The enormous waves that reached the heavens didn't topple this platform. Instead, they provided powerful tidal energy, helping the platform complete a series of energy transformations. Right now, this transformation mode was still a rootless duckweed, but Luo Nan believed that it wouldn't be long before there would be a huge change. The progress of the forced infusion transformation is okay. It's just that I'm a bit uncertain when I put the seed in. It really won't do. I'll ask Roy when to help. Has she finished her class yet? While Luo Nan was distracted, a heat wave of lava that was several dozen meters tall suddenly surged within the enormous void. It nearly filled the entire void in an instant, swallowing number 1 whole. The electromagnetic shield was raised to the highest level in an instant. This was the instantaneous limit of Luo Nan's soul strength when it came to interfering with the material plane. Even the depths of the layers of dark red lava had blue-white lightning tenaciously leaping about. It held on for at least 2 seconds, but in the end, it was scattered and shattered. Luo Nan knew that the instantaneous influx of energy had caused quite a bit of damage to the combat machine. But this was already meaningless. This was because the surging wave of lava had smashed the combat machine into pieces. The faint sounds of the body fragments exploding were drowned out by the enormous background noise of the void. There was no value in saving it. Such a tyrannical attack was the result of the seething evil thoughts of the fire god ant colony. But this wasn't necessarily directed at number 1. According to Mo Luan's feedback, this was more like a venting action of the colony after repeated failed attacks. Luo Nan could see that more than half of the dozen ant chambers within the enormous void had collapsed due to the attack just now. This part of the blood circulation system, which could be considered complete, had a large area of necrosis in the blink of an eye. Harming others and harming oneself. It was nothing more than this. TSK. How violent. Luckily, I specially chose a high melting point tantalum alloy. I also did some heat insulation. Number 1's head module was still considered complete, as well as half of its chest and shoulder armor. This was the largest wreckage that Luo Nan's electromagnetic shield could protect. Its body functions had already been completely lost. Its only function now was to protect the metal core in the high-temperature lava, so that it wouldn't be quickly destroyed. Currently, the wreckage of number 1's body had completely lost its ability to move. It was slowly sinking in the lava. In the extreme environment of the lava, the interaction between mind and matter was severely limited. Forcefully obtaining a driving force was not desirable, and this was not a good opportunity. So it could only be a mechanical beauty that quietly watched from the sidelines for now. Chapter 600. Wreckage number 1 continued to sink closer and closer to the heart at the bottom of the lava. It was also the lowest level of the Vulcan ant nest, the area where the ant queen resided. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but the core area of the Vulcan ant nest really did look like an enormous heart. Most of its structure was embedded into the ground. It was completely exposed to the lava and was approximately 20 meters tall. It was undulating due to the intense activity of the ground. It really was like the swelling and contracting of a living heart. Moreover, there were 6 thick pipes connected to the top. Dark red blood was constantly pouring in and circulating. Although the color of this blood was similar to the lava, it was not to the extent of being confused. This was because the luster of the active flow was hard to be completely concealed even by the layers of lava. Luo Nan was still thinking about the lava attack that had smashed wreckage number 1 into pieces. The mental sensor network that pervaded the lava focused slightly under his command. It swept from the heart to the inside and outside of the continuously sinking ant room structure. Liquid lava can achieve hammering. This shows that it has a set of controls. But it doesn't seem like it can already carry out consciousness interference with the surrounding environment. There should be a medium. Not only can the Vulcan ant control a living body, it can even control lava. The operating mechanism here seems a bit familiar. Such a marvelous operating mode clearly did not appear in normal data. Luo Nan soon had an idea. It's in the user's manual. It seems to have been mentioned in the material chapter. Ha! The underground lava trembled once more. At first Luo Nan believed that this was another vent of the Vulcan ants' collective consciousness. But he soon confirmed that this unforeseen event was not led by the Vulcan ants' consciousness, but it was inextricably linked to it. Within the twisting vortex of the void of the abyss region and the inferno of lava, a structure of special significance was soaked in the residual energy that overflowed from both sides. It silently molded and grew. It had already taken shape. It broke through the already somewhat weak ground layer with a single tremor. It stuck close to the heart of the Vulcan ant nest, withstood the boiling lava, and rose up. It was a thick and short stone pillar. Even if it stuck its head out, it would only be a meter tall in the end. It was practically insignificant next to the enormous Vulcan ant nest that occupied the entire mountain and several hundred meters of the ground layer. It was like a speck on a person's body. It could be ignored in a matter of seconds. But just as the stone pillar was pulled out, the turbulent vortex that was twisting in the void, causing it to coil and accumulate sediment, suddenly came to a stop. Luo Nan had yet to come to a conclusion as to what sort of stimulative changes occurred to the collective consciousness of the fire god ants in this instant. But from Luo Nan's perspective, Luo Nan felt that Mo Luan was at the helm. The floating power-generating platform drifted up and down within the enormous waves that reached the heavens. Suddenly, an enormous anchor was fiercely stabbed into it. The end of the anchor hit the bottom of the ocean. Although it was shaking violently and even bringing an even more intense blast to the floating platform, it was still deeply embedded into the soil and anchored to the hard seabed. This was not all. At this moment, on the platform, another heavy and sturdy pile fell, directly wedged into the depths of the turbulent vortex. 1 pile, 2 piles, 3 piles, 4 piles. At the heart of the Vulcan ant nest, the thick and short stone pillars were pulled up one by one, just like the piles that had fallen. Some of the piles had just probed down when they were wrapped in lava by the berserk consciousness of the fire god ants, smashing them to pieces. But there were also some piles that were either deep or shallow, fixed in place. Then they were pulled up, smashed, wedged in, and smashed again. It was hard to say which one was more tenacious like this over and over again. But in any case, the floating platform never broke away from the storm vortex. Instead, it was fixed within this domain, forming a deadlock. This was also the most terrifying phase of energy consumption. No matter how marvelous Mo Luan's combat consciousness was, he was just a B-rank puppet. There was a limit to his own energy reserves. It was impossible for him to directly contend against the fire god ants, who occupied the terrain advantage. Therefore, he could only rely on his master, Luo Nan's closed system. This was, without a doubt, a collision between the two systems. After the first wave, Luo Nan was already very strained. In a certain sense, Luo Nan's soul strength reserves were already the best in the world. This was not only because of the enormous output of his closed system's large production line. It was also because he could ignore the carrying capacity of his fleshly body. He could use the form of the soul cloak to extend and store energy nearly limitlessly. Luo Nan's current soul cloak could cover the entire world. In addition to the combined reserves of the boundless cloud world, Luo Nan's stamina was so long that he could practically suppress all the cultivators of the world. Perhaps only the leaders of the 3 great secret orders could rely on their enormous numbers of believers to contend against him. The only thing that could limit Luo Nan was the carrying capacity of his fleshly body. Though he possessed the boundless ocean, his body's capacity was limited in the end. Even if he were to be sucked dry in an instant, it would be nothing more than the storage capacity of a lake. Not to mention the vibrations and impacts of doing so, just the transformation within was destined to lead to one fault after another. This was extremely dangerous in the tight deadlock process. If the opponent was a genuine extraordinary, Luo Nan's life would be pretty much handed over when the first fault appeared. The collective consciousness of the Vulcan ant was not this sharp. It was unable to sense Luo Nan's flaws. But even so, Luo Nan, who was in the simulator, was like a twisted towel under the frantic and irascible impact of the wrestling. The muscles, tendons, bones, and flesh of his entire body seemed to be about to be squeezed out of it. If this situation were to continue, Luo Nan would have done his utmost to dig a peerless sinkhole for himself. He could absolutely contend for the top 3 spot on the list of the stupidest people in the 50 years of history of the inner world. Fortunately, this enemy of his did not develop to a qualified and perfect degree, even though it had gathered millions of individuals into a group consciousness. Not only did it not discover the problem that Luo Nan exposed, it even poked an even bigger hole. The group consciousness of the Vulcan ant did not know how to properly utilize its own strength. It also did not understand that this kind of strength would inevitably harm others and itself once it exceeded a certain limit. If it were Luo Nan, he would absolutely not forcefully break through this limit when the instantaneous consumption of soul strength exceeded the limits of what his body could bear under normal circumstances. He would exchange endless future troubles for temporary pleasure. The Vulcan ant did not have this kind of awareness. In its simple mind, using its innate talent to drive the enemy was obviously the most important option. But at this stage, when faced with Mo Luan, who was like a mist of nothingness, and number 1, who had already turned into a pile of mechanical wreckage, the so-called drive ability was of no use. So it could only settle for the next best thing. It used its incomplete side ability to knock down the enemy. It must be said that the upper limit of the Vulcan ant side ability was extremely high in the environment of the volcanic region. There would practically never be a situation where it was lacking in strength. Under these circumstances, its train of thought was even simpler. If it did not knock down the enemy, then it would need to increase its strength once more until the enemy was smashed into smithereens. With the foundation of reality, this kind of train of thought could not be wrong. But it did not consider one thing: who would be the first to be destroyed in such a big fight in its own nest? In any case, it won't be me. Luo Nan grimaced in pain. He used the Daoyin technique given to him by the gym bishop to relax his muscles and bones, to reduce the damage. At the same time, he was able to capture the turning point of this confrontation within this stalemate. He did not need to wait for the Vulcan ant to smash his nest into smithereens. He only needed to keep an eye on this one-track-minded group consciousness. The instant the two instincts of killing the enemy and self-preservation intersected, creating an even deeper level of chaos. The turning point arrived much faster than Luo Nan imagined. But it happened after all the ant chambers in the enormous cavity above the lava had completely collapsed. The Vulcan ants that fell into the lava were not immediately finished. But every ant chamber and every connecting pipe was the foundation of the Vulcan ant colony. They were an important construction foundation and source of energy for the group consciousness. When large areas of necrosis appeared endlessly and continued to spread, a blockage appeared in the originally complete energy cycle. In the end, hesitation and chaos appeared in this single strand of group consciousness. It was at this moment that the true great enemy, who had crossed realms and hidden here from another time and space, revealed its fangs to the Vulcan ant colony. The instant of hesitation and chaos expanded into a destructive storm in the blink of an eye. The Wraith sign exploded from above the polar domain like a bomb filled with poison. It smashed into the structure of the group consciousness that the Vulcan ant colony had formed with great difficulty. Luo Nan knew better than the vast majority of people in this world just how strict the requirements of a structure were for a group consciousness that had a clear direction. The group consciousness of the Vulcan ant society was able to become neutral from the chaotic and illusory mental turbid flow with great difficulty. A small portion of it probed into the abyssal region and was able to integrate its power from a higher level. But because of the Wraith sign's deadly bombardment, the structure collapsed and the foundation was corroded. This caused the edifice of group consciousness, which originally possessed a certain order, to collapse and fall apart in an instant. It must be said that as long as there was a nest and a strict social structure of the Vulcan ant, it was not difficult to reconstruct the group consciousness. Since the beginning of time, the Vulcan ant colony in the volcanic area had been penetrated 5 times by powerful people from all walks of life. Each time, it was a great crisis that nearly overturned the entire colony. Even the queen ant was captured. The most recent time was 6 or 7 years ago, and this didn't include the aftermath of the world-shaking battle with priceless gold. But within these short few years, the Vulcan ant colony had developed to its current scale. They were still the number 1 or 2 hegemons of this volcanic area. The tenacity of the Vulcan ant colony was worthy of admiration. But the problem was that the Wraith sign was the poison bomb that had instantly destroyed the core structure of the Vulcan ant society. This Darksider species was currently using its inconceivable talent to pour its toxic spores into the ruins of the core structure. The spores began to proliferate rapidly. The Vulcan ant began by controlling other living creatures. And this time, they had encountered a true expert in this field. Chapter 601. The opportunity came earlier than expected. After the Wraith sign blew up the structure of the group consciousness of the Vulcan ants, it naturally activated the corresponding mechanisms to stop damage and repair. As mentioned before, as long as the Vulcan ant aberration nest was present, the material foundation and structure were present, it was not difficult to reconstruct the group consciousness. The Vulcan ant society had used 5 or 6 successful examples to prove this point. According to the relevant information from research on the Vulcan ants, when the Vulcan ant society suffered a fatal attack, usually when the queen was killed or captured, or when the aberration nest was severely damaged, causing the group consciousness to collapse and the ants to be leaderless, this highly social aberration colony would activate its extreme survival mode. They would use the relatively intact area as an axis on the wreckage of the nest to combine the ant chambers and ant tunnels that could be linked together. They would radiate the relevant pheromones to gather the greatest number of defeated soldiers. After gathering to a certain scale, they would use a special aberration path to stimulate and nurture a temporary queen ant. They would reconstruct the group consciousness in a short amount of time. With this as the foundation, they would rapidly replace each other and regroup. If there was no area of this scale, a single ant chamber could complete this task. It was just that the group consciousness produced would be of an extremely low level. The various ant chambers would gradually integrate and slowly converge. However, this would be accompanied by conflict and slaughter. It would inevitably end with the death of the temporary queen and of the losing side. The process would be extremely tragic. It was this extreme survival mode and its matching ability to rapidly replace each other that helped the Vulcan ant society to tenaciously survive in this volcanic region for several decades. But it was also because such a pattern had appeared too early in today's special circumstances. The Wraith sign's poison bomb struck from above, crushing the group consciousness of the Vulcan ant society from the mental plane. This attack didn't cause much damage to the Vulcan ant nest, but it sent the hypertoxic spores into every corner of the Vulcan ant society. Luo Nan still did not understand the Wraith sign's keen and brutal instincts. He did not know how it was constructed. But every time this fellow hunted, it would accurately tear apart the vital parts of the target. This time was no exception. The hypertoxic spores did not possess any direct destructive power, but when they spread out, the fire god ants that were moving through the various ant rooms and ant tunnels suddenly fell into chaos in their neat and orderly formation. It was as if they had lost their sense of direction. The front and back of the formation were disjointed. Some of them accelerated forward while others turned back. Some of them even clashed together, interfering with each other as they circled in confusion. Interference pheromone. Luo Nan roughly guessed an answer. Ants and the like were social insects. Their behavior patterns were largely guided by pheromones. Though the Vulcan ant was a mutant species, it still retained a few similar patterns. Due to the Vulcan ants receiving erratic information, the large circulation system with the heart of the nest as the center was already in disorder. However, upon closer inspection, there were some general patterns that could be followed. Millions and tens of millions of fire god ants were clearly gathering towards the nearest ant room. Every ant chamber was a center, and there were no exceptions. Thus, in a short span of a dozen seconds, the aberrated nest had hundreds and thousands of centers. They had even begun to cut off the circulation channels and retract the flowing energy, entering a de facto state of separation. This is really, hee. For the fire god ants that had been torn apart, no, they had not done anything wrong. The instincts engraved in their genes were displaying their effects. After the leading group consciousness collapsed, they quickly entered an extreme survival mode. The environment they felt and the stimuli they received indicated that the overall structure of the aberrated nest no longer existed. They had to use the remaining ant chambers as the center to gather the greatest amount of power and reconstruct the group consciousness. Then they would be constantly replaced and walk the path of expansion once more. So they did this, and they did it quite well. The crisis pheromone formed after the ant assembly was violently volatile. It was injected into the ant chambers through a special method, erasing the suppressive pheromone from when the Vulcan ant queen was alive. This caused a portion of the worker ants inside to undergo aberrations. At the same time, they killed each other. The final victor became the temporary queen ant. They erected a rough new framework and began to construct a low-level group consciousness. During this period of time, the Vulcan ant nest had the beauty of a single spark setting a prairie ablaze. Within Luo Nan's mental sensing network, there were weak soul flames lighting up one after another. From a few, to a few dozen, to over 100. They quickly formed a scale. The amount of resources that the Vulcan ants could utilize in the environment of the volcanic area should not be doubted. Although these low-level group consciousnesses were far from being as powerful as the previous one, the imprint engraved in their genes still gave them the natural ability to absorb external heat and life energy. According to normal survival mode, these low-level group consciousnesses would have a period of solitude to further familiarize themselves with and apply this ability. When they began to expand once more, they should be experts in this field. They would capture thousands upon thousands of living creatures of other races during the expansion process. They would serve as food and slaves. Then they would rely on the advantage of expansion to defeat their own species that no longer belonged to the same aberrated evolutionary path. They would unify the volcanic area once more and let their genes follow an even stronger path of development and inheritance. But there was a problem. At this stage, every ant chamber was very close to each other. They were close to each other to the point where they would be face to face the moment they stepped out of the door. According to the genetic instincts of the Vulcan ants, they did not have any kinship or brotherly respect when faced with this kind of situation. The only choice was fight. The internal war of the Vulcan ants erupted 15 seconds after the formation of the first low-level group consciousnesses. They entered into an all-out war mode 5 minutes later. For a time, the entire core area of the Vulcan ant nest was filled with the flames of war. And the effects of the collapse of the original group consciousnesses were still continuing to spread. If there was a problem at the headquarters, then the branch divisions would not have an easy time. It was unknown when the unrest in the entire volcanic area would come to an end. Speaking of which, the entire Vulcan ant society had suddenly entered the spring and autumn warring states period mode. It wasn't that no one wanted to do their best to save it. Originally, the only core of the aberrated nest was located in the heart beneath the lava. The highest ruler of the entire Vulcan ant society, or perhaps a queen, had to be added. Well, in short, the true Vulcan ant queen was extremely angry and irritable at this moment. The Vulcan ant queen was probably a mutant among mutants. It had an extremely deformed body. The front half of its body was only 4 or 5 centimeters long. It was around 5 times the size of a normal Vulcan ant. But below its abdomen, it was rapidly expanding in an unimaginable manner. Its diameter alone was 10 centimeters, about the width of an adult's clenched fist. As for its length, it was about the length of an entire arm behind it. This structure was a little similar to the termite queen. Many researchers suspected that the original species before the mutation was a termite. But no termite queen would have this kind of mass and strength. The completely unbalanced body proportions made it look more like a super large eggplant with a handle. At this moment, this eggplant was squirming slightly. A dirty light like pus and blood filled the entire space of the heart. It reflected the countless fertilized eggs and non-fertilized eggs piled neatly on the 4 walls, as well as the rather neat ranks of worker ants and soldier ants. Even further out, there were layers of blood-red fluff spread out, like layers upon layers of terraced crops, neatly arranged. It became an inseparable part of the internal structure of the heart. At this moment, the Vulcan Ant Queen had just recovered from the shock of losing control of her kingdom. In the entire Vulcan Ant society, the Vulcan Ant Queen was definitely the one closest to possessing a complete individual consciousness. In fact, it was the core of the Vulcan Ant's collective consciousness. This was its most important function in this colony other than reproduction. It could be said that the collective consciousness of the entire Vulcan Ant society was determined by the mutation talent and growth of the queen. This queen was still very young. It had only been about 2 years since she became the ruler of this kingdom. This caused it to be far from developing a mature consciousness system, making it even harder for it to make accurate and clear judgments. This limitation caused the collapse of the collective consciousness of the Vulcan Ant when the two systems collided. It also caused it to be unable to analyze the crux of the problem after losing control of the kingdom. Instead, it was quickly driven by an even more stubborn instinct. The great enemy that descended from the sky was thrown to the back of its mind. What it needed to do now was to consolidate its resources and strength, using a more advantageous structure among a bunch of low-level consciousnesses to reclaim its kingdom and become the ruler of this world once again. In the spring and autumn warring states period, it undoubtedly had an overwhelming advantage. But the current scenario was alien invasion. The former queen and the future overlord were not given any chances. A bloody beam of light tore through the barrier between the mental and material planes, directly piercing into the heart region. This was an artillery attack from the direction of the polar domain. Ever since Luo Nan was tossed around by the dimensional crossbow, he had taken a liking to this sort of tyrannical and fierce offensive method that came from the polar domain. Right now, he no longer had the tyrannical collective consciousness of the Vulcan Ants. There was Mo Luan in the void of the abyssal region. There was the seed imprint in the depths of the lava. The Wraith sign itself had long since transcended space and boundaries. All kinds of interference had disappeared, and there were 2 positions of reference at the same time. There was absolutely no reason for the attack to miss the mark. The bloody beam of light silently drowned the area where the Vulcan Ant Queen was. A similar hue flooded the entire ant room. At this moment, inside the heart, countless zygotes and non-zygotes, the dense troop of soldier ants, and the eggplant queen, which was supposed to be the toughest, were all twisted and destroyed in the intense ripples of light. Chapter 602. In this era, the night in any city was no different. The only thing that could be distinguished was the food habits accumulated over a long period of time. After moving from Xia City to T City for 2 months, Yinlu still hadn't gotten used to the completely different tastes. She returned to Xia City this time. The food she had grown accustomed to in her early years gave her a unique feeling when it collided with her taste buds. But tonight, Yinlu didn't eat. This was a habit she had developed with Mrs. Halder. Lady Halder had maintained this habit for more than 10 years. The last time she had a meal was before she had beheaded her husband. But Frau Halder did not mind a glass of red wine before bed. Thus, Yinlu pushed the dining cart and knocked on Mrs. Halder's door. Mrs. Halder had just finished her bath and was sitting on a round armchair by the window. Her bathrobe covered her pale skin, revealing only her calves and bare feet. The most conspicuous thing was that on her right cheek, there was a long and slender bloodstain that had a strange curvature. At this moment, it was emitting a dark red light. This was not a description. This bloodstain was proof that she had passed the ultimate test of the blood flame will. In itself, it had a rather mystical effect. Boss. Yinlu used the old way of addressing Mrs. Halder. Then, just like when she was a secretary back then, she poured the red wine into a glass and let Mrs. Halder take it. Lady Halder picked up the thin stem of the glass and raised it to her eyes, staring at the red wine swirling within. At this moment, Lady Halder was like a melancholy and lonely lady, although her heart was surging with iron and fire. Yinlu sat to the side, wondering if she should start a conversation. At this moment, Lady Halder took the initiative to speak, her voice low. Our investor refused to meet. Enla didn't find it strange at all. She had guessed it when she left Xia City last time. However, she had always been curious as to who the investor that Lady Halder had mentioned was. This wasn't some inconceivable person who had taught Madame Halder the secret art of hurting the Darksider species in order to reconstruct the sacrificial artifact. In the entirety of Xia City, there were only a handful of people who had the qualifications to do this. Even if it wasn't limited to Xia City, how many more people could there be? Lady Halder swirled the wine, her eyes unfocused. Is it to prevent losses, or are they happy to see it happen? That is the question. Right now, Madame Halder seemed to be in low spirits. The more it was like this, the harder it was for Enla to speak. She stared at the cup in her hand in a daze. Fortunately, this atmosphere didn't last for too long. Very quickly, Lady Halder's voice regained its usual calmness and decisiveness. The investment is only an external force. The wavering of the church's foundation is what's fatal. You are now the only deputy officiator, so you must focus your efforts on the ritual. Although Ren Hong is a rebel, he is better at this than you are. Even Ren Hong, that dead man, was compared. Enla naturally understood their attitude and replied solemnly, I will remember. Lady Halder cut to the chase. What about the target? The target has entered the abyss area again, but there won't be any offensive and defensive drills tonight or for the next 2 or 3 days. I heard that teacher Luo is in seclusion. Luo Nan isn't here. He's basically just looking at the scenery in the abyssal region. But who can say that in a few months, a few weeks, or even a few days, there won't be new functions? Indeed. Enlo added before she hesitated briefly before she asked, Boss, the blood will ring in us, Enlo didn't continue. Lady Halder looked at her former secretary through her wine glass. The sparkling and translucent walls of the glass caused the two's faces to clearly distort. As the glass spun, it transformed into all sorts of strange shapes. Communication between people was often like this. It was precisely because they knew that people were all the more cautious. Lady Halder understood Ian Lee's thoughts. She also understood her apprehensions. At this time, it was the superior who spoke the truth. This represented honesty and trust, so she hooked the corner of her lips. You want to ask if the structure of the blood will ring and the fundamental ritual of the order, the Blood Soul Temple, belong to the same category. Let's put it this way. The word configuration that Luo Nan spoke of can be used to generalize the Blood Will Ring and the Blood Soul Temple. From an academic perspective, they should both belong to the same class of configuration. Enlo let out a secret sigh of relief and hurriedly responded, that's why we monitor the corresponding target for reference. Lady Halder interrupted her words, but before the 14th, I once believed that the solidification of configurations in the abyssal region belonged only to extraordinaries and the order. Ian Lee's expression darkened slightly. Before the 14th, there weren't many ability users in this world who could enter the attack and defense of the abyssal region, but there were still quite a few. Mental side users of B rank and above had several years of research, and they should have no problem doing so. However, the average B rank mental side user would only be able to stay in the abyssal region for a few seconds to a few minutes before they would be struck down by the turbulent flow of energy. There were a few who were more powerful, and they could temporarily forge special structures to turn resistance into power. They could seize a short opportunity to attack and kill. Only those who reached the level of extraordinaries, especially the mental side extraordinaries, could solidify this structure, the configuration that Luo Nan spoke of, within the energy flow of the abyssal region. It was like a car or a boat, like a house or a city. It could truly utilize and control the inexhaustible energy of the abyssal region. It could be adjusted and modified a step further, gradually increasing its power. Aside from extraordinaries, the only ones who could accomplish this before the 14th were the various orders, the ones who could transform the hearts of the people into their own. Actually, not everyone in the various secret orders had this ability. They had to have extraordinaries overseeing the abyssal region in the early years. They were able to solidify the configuration of the abyssal region, then transform it into a foundation. They were able to link their believers' desires, beliefs, and so on. Then, they used this to divide the level of authority, allowing one person's technique to be used by 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 people. The origins and details of these techniques were the secrets of the various orders. Every orders had their own specialties and taboos, and they were hidden behind a dense fog of mystery. Only someone like Yin, who was a core member of the upper echelons of the orders, who was part of the orders of ideals like the Blood Flame Order, was able to understand, learn, and understand its essence. Yin originally believed that this would be the core secret and reliance that she would guard within her heart. But she never expected that the Blood Intent Ring would appear out of nowhere and bump into this highest domain. It even brought several hundred people to tour around. Up until now, no one had connected this matter with the fundamental rules of the various orders. But how long could this last? Both inside and outside were in turmoil. What could she do? Mrs. Halder saw through Yinli's thoughts. She lowered her head slightly, indicating for Yinlu to come over. Yinlu was a bit startled, but she still got up and walked over to her former boss's side. At this distance, in this atmosphere, she subconsciously did what she did in the past. She curled up her body and bent her legs. She sat on the carpet and leaned against Mrs. Halder's knee. She was like an admiring child, but she was even more like an obedient kitten. Her choice was very correct. Chapter 603. Ever since she had become the vice officiant, Yinlu had entered the Abyss region more than once, entering the Blood Soul Temple, towering amidst the chaotic turbulence. Every time, she felt as if she was riding a small boat out to sea, boarding a platform amidst a violent storm. The stability of the platform was naturally much greater than that of a small boat, giving her a great sense of security. However, the impact of the storm and turbulence was always present. Yinlu felt that the Blood Soul Temple was a platform on the sea, but she had no idea what it looked like in the eyes of others. That was because in the order system, the Blood Soul Temple had countless sides. In the eyes of every believer, there were subtle similarities and differences, but they could never see the whole picture. As a priest, how could she not be the same? As the vice officiant, Yinlu could understand the basic framework of the Blood Soul Temple and control a portion of the details. She used a secret technique to purify the believer's will, using it as a primer to mobilize the power of the Abyss region. This allowed her, with her C+ rank strength, to compete with B rank experts. The position of vice officiant had raised Yinli's level, but she had always felt that this wasn't a good job. This was especially true after Ren Hong's rebellion. After she had taken over the Order's daily operations, she had to sort out and guide the willpower of thousands of believers every day for the past 2 months. Furthermore, due to the instability of the believer base during this period of time, there were all sorts of troubles and slip-ups. Even with Lady Halder taking care of it, it still took up most of her energy. Sometimes, Yinlu even thought, Ren Hong's rebellion. Could it be that he's tired of this matter? Lady Halder seemed to have the ability to see through people's minds. She communicated with her thoughts. Mastering the sacrificial method and managing the Blood Soul Temple have always been the most difficult tasks. You have foresight and decisiveness, and you also have the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. However, you lack the tenacity to put in the effort. These things aren't the most suitable for you. Yinlu hurriedly expressed, I will definitely focus on my thoughts. Lady Halder disagreed. Such a personality isn't something that can be easily fixed. Not to mention you, even I have had a hard time sorting through these past few years. Constantly immersed in this chaotic power of faith, it will only be more difficult to maintain one's own thoughts. Yin-lo once again thought of Ren-hong. Madame Halder's thoughts seeped in like icy water, layer by layer. In the end, it's because of the lack of sacrificial artifacts. The sacrificial vessel can be manipulated, suppressed, and adjusted. At the same time, it is also a set of rules. Our various operations can be used as a reference to see if they are in line with the fundamental laws. I just don't know if we have led the church on the right path in the past few years. Boss. Madame Halder's thoughts continued unabated. Without the sacrificial artifact, we can only wait until every year's grand ceremony. But this year. Yin-lo finally understood why Mrs. Halder's mood was so low. Because today, December 21st, was the day of the Blood Flame Order's establishment memorial ceremony. This time of the year was the busiest and most important time for the church. But this year, today, and tonight were undoubtedly the most chaotic and desolate. Since the officiator and deputy officiator were not present, Jiang Yuanjin could only take over the ceremony in D City. As for the ceremony in Xia City, they had spent half a year preparing for it, so they simply threw it aside. Yin-lo once believed that Madame Halder would return to Xia City at this time to give an explanation to the believers of Xia City. She never imagined that she would die without a cause. She stayed within the Blood Soul Temple in the Abyss district. She could feel the will of the believers wither and waver. Yin-lo wasn't even willing to understand it any further. She just wanted to clean up the mess tomorrow morning. Madame Halder clearly had a different way of thinking from Yin-lo. She sent a strand of her thoughts straight to the lowest level, where the withering and wavering was the most intense. Yin-lo was helpless. She could only follow. Soon, she arrived at the structure of the Blood Soul Temple, where the stone forest and magma lake were. Originally, this was the structural region where the believers' will was cleansed and purified. The powerful structure of the Blood Soul Temple condensed a powerful internal pressure to form a lake of magma. The muddy willpower of the believers continued to be tempered until it reached a certain degree. Only then could they go to a higher level. But now, the internal force was loose. There was no heat. There was only restlessness and chaos. It was like a mosquito flying in disorder. The willpower of some devout believers even fell down. They were affected and gradually showed signs of stripping away. Faced with such a situation, Yin-lo felt that idling around was a sin. She subconsciously took action to control it. Fortunately, the basic structure of the Blood Soul Temple was still stable. The first Oblatum had indeed left behind a stable foundation for the order. Madame Halder didn't move. She only watched Yin-lo and asked, "Are we at the edge of the abyss now?" "No, boss, no." Yin-lo might lack the willpower to do her best, but her foresight and judgment had always been praised. She didn't think that there was a problem with Madame Halder's will. She only saw the current situation as a test. As she dealt with the loss of the believer's faith, she solemnly replied, "It's just as you said." At the bottom of the abyss of fear and despair, the mighty blood flame will is watching us. The Blood Flame Order's teachings had always been extremely violent. On one hand, it made it very difficult for them to expand. On the other hand, it made it have a relatively solid core of believers. Moreover, the more adversity they faced, the more they were able to display the resolute nature of the teachings. Last time, when the Blood Flame Order was on the verge of collapse, it was precisely this extremely resolute nature that gave birth to Madame Halder. She used her husband's head to prolong the order's life and rebirth. Now, perhaps it was her turn. Bang, bang, bang. A strange sound suddenly came from a certain part of the bottom structure. Yin Li's heart skipped a beat. Her smooth control suddenly became sluggish. She didn't even have time to search for the source of the problem before the continuous bang, bang sound spread throughout the stone forest and magma lake area. In response to it, the turbulent storm outside suddenly became intense. The Blood Soul Temple, the platform on the sea, began to sway, causing one's mind to be in chaos. At this moment, the destructive storm of the abyss seemed like it could cut through at any time. In Ian Lee's perception, the basic framework of the Blood Soul Temple was clearly distorted. It was on the verge of collapsing and breaking. Ian Lee didn't know what to do, and Madame Halder didn't give her any instructions. Just like that, her consciousness stiffened as she spent a nightmarish period of time in the bang, bang, bang sound. When she came back to her senses, her consciousness had already returned to the plane of reality. It was most likely that Madame Halder had brought her back. The light in the room was warm and gentle, but Ian Lee's heart was filled with coldness. Her memories of the abyss were somewhat hazy, but she still remembered that the structure of the Blood Soul Temple had already undergone some kind of irreversible change after the continuous distortion. Ian Lee turned her head, wanting to ask what had just happened. When she turned her head, her cheek rubbed against Madame Halder's body. Because she was kneeling, she rubbed against a leg that was exposed outside the bathrobe. It was slender and tight, but it was so cold that it didn't have the warmth of a living person. Halder didn't seem to feel anything. He just expressionlessly raised his glass and drank the red wine. But Ian Lee clearly sensed a faint layer of blood mixed in the wine's fragrance. "Boss." Ian Lee was bewildered. She wanted to get up, but her head hurt slightly as Halder pressed down on it. Madame Halder looked down from above, her gaze cold and heavy. When she looked into Ian Lee's eyes, it was like an icy storm had blown, wreaking havoc in her heart. "Do you feel it?" "Ah." "The sacrificial artifact of the Blood Soul Temple." "Boss." "Someone has made the sacrificial artifact, the Blood Soul Temple, and they're even modifying the framework." Ian Lee's eyes went wide. Bang! The empty wine glass shattered, and the shattered glass fragments scattered over Madame Halder's bathrobe and leg. Some of it even streaked across Ian Lee's cheek. But at this time, Ian Lee didn't even dare to blink. On Madame Halder's right cheek, there was a long and narrow bloodstain. It seemed as if blood was really going to flow out. Aside from that, her entire face was pale and transparent. There was a callous and crazy tension to it. She calmly gazed at the base of the glass. It was as if a new cup could grow out from the base at any time, or perhaps it could grow into an unknown shape. The unknown was the greatest fear. The members of the Blood Flame Order never avoided fear. They firmly believed that the blood flame was hidden deep within fear, giving them strength. But when their foundation was controlled by someone else, would the blood flame still protect them? Half a minute later, Madame Halder spoke with a surprisingly calm tone, "Notify multifaceted. In an hour, I want all the video data of Sia City Central train station and its surroundings on the 14th. The range can extend to 30 square kilometers. Also, no matter what method she uses, no matter what price she wants us to pay, I need an opportunity to directly make contact with Luo Nan. Alone, without interference." Ian Lee was a bit stunned. "Luo Nan." Madame Halder pursed her lips. "Luo Nan." The first and vice oblatums of the Blood Flame Order repeated the name Luo Nan back and forth. Several dozen kilometers away, in the 6th underground floor of Gear, Luo Nan clenched his fists within the simulation pod. "It's done." His main consciousness was still 2,000 kilometers away in the volcanic region. Just a minute ago, when the polar domain cannon had annihilated the Queen Ant, a solid foundation had been erected. These were the thick and short stone pillars that had popped out earlier. They rose up one by one and firmly wedged themselves into the heart of the mutated nest. In a short few dozen seconds, the thick and short stone pillars had formed a scale in the heart of the Vulcan ant nest. They towered like a forest. Together, they constructed a primitive and rough foundation of an altar, allowing the illusory Blood Soul Temple to break through the boundary between the mental and the material. It also tore apart the defensive fortress of the Vulcan Ant Society and forcefully colonized it. It was a formal struggle for control over this enormous energy cycle system. The interior of the Vulcan ant nest's heart had already been flooded by the light and shadow of the Blood Soul Temple. It was remodeled, and beneath it, within the area encircled by the stone forest, a depression of magma that was clearly denser than the surroundings appeared in its embryonic form. The boiling magma within was no longer something that was purely on the material plane. Instead, it was mixed with an even more astonishing amount of heat and gas. It was like a pot of boiling oil. It constantly splashed outwards, but it did not exceed the range of the stone forest's control. Chapter 604. For the Blood Soul Temple, the bottom layer of the stone forest lava lake was a methane pool that absorbed and transformed the impurities of the outside world. It was also the cornerstone of the entire configuration. When the cornerstone was set, the nature of the entire configuration system became clear. Luo Nan finally found a foundation on the material plane for this structure that drifted on the mental plane of nothingness. Luo Nan wasn't sure if the Blood Flame Order's method mentioned this step, but he saw a similar suggestion from the user manual of the virtual brain system. From Luo Nan's perspective, it went without saying which side was more important. There was also the coincidental ecological and geographical environment of this volcanic area. There was also the urgent need for resources for the next step of the plan. Only then was there an operation. It hadn't even been a week since the start of the operation. Aside from feeling a bit frustrated with the design of the battle machinery, the overall operation was quite smooth. Especially the success of the current critical segment in one fell swoop. This made the impatience and hesitation in Luo Nan's heart vanish into thin air. He was in a good mood, but the fire god ant's mutated nest was already clogged and impassable. When the Blood Soul Temple's stone forest lava lake took shape, it was as if a deadly malignant tumor had grown within the fire god ant nest's energy circulation system. It continuously extracted the surrounding heat energy and the life energy of the fire god ant colony, transforming them into nutrients needed by the Blood Soul Temple. The efficiency of this transformation wasn't particularly high for the time being because the Blood Soul Temple needed to adapt to the environment and constantly adjust. But it was still a level higher than the fire god ant's crude energy circulation instincts. In addition, the fire god ant colony had entered the warring states period. Each ant room was divided and fought to the death. The group consciousness had yet to be reconstructed, and the originally smooth energy circulation system had become particularly rigid. There was practically no effective way to fight for the stone forest lava lake. More importantly, the formation of the stone forest lava lake represented the foundation of the Blood Soul Temple structure. In essence, it achieved isolation from the fire god ant nest. And since it didn't possess the aura of a living being, the group of fire god ants with low intelligence just assumed that it was a new structure formed from the compression and deformation of the volcano during an earthquake. Currently, the fire god ants used a single ant room as a base for internal strife. Their need for resources wasn't too urgent, so they didn't experience the problem of a single blocked node. At most, they weren't used to such an eyesore, but they didn't have any plans to attack, occupy, or transform it for the time being. They just let the stone forest lava lake suck their blood. This was the classic example of making a fortune in silence. Before the new fire god ant queen appears, there will most likely be peace for a period of time. This amount of time is still not enough. If the error in the calculation is not too big, I will need at least another 50 hours or so to complete the second and third levels, and have a certain offensive and defensive ability. If there's a design problem, we'll have to delay it. Luo Nan's relaxed mood was not maintained for long. He was pressuring himself right now, flipping through his notes in the simulation chamber. His brain was spinning a bit faster than when he had slaughtered his way in. Not only can I not be quiet during this period of time, I can't let the Vulcan ants in the other ant rooms be quiet either. Interference, destruction, annexation. Not a single one can be left out. Oh, large-scale destruction is out of the question. Every resource is precious right now. TSK, why does it look like an RTS game? But RTS should not include the design of the base and building core. As he ridiculed himself, Luo Nan continued to overcome his terrible translation obstacles. He operated the virtual brain system, performing half-baked simulations and calculations on the Blood Soul Temple that was being constructed. The Blood Soul Temple was a kind of configuration. Though it was complex to the point of making one's eyes pop out, and many elements of witchcraft and mystic arts were mixed in, its various layers of structure were pieced together. Even the thought process that appeared within was a relatively typical configuration rule and thought process. Even if the level of each structure was uneven. There were countless dazzling flashes of brilliance, but there were also low-level mistakes that were unbearable to look at. While Luo Nan didn't have the qualifications to question the abilities of the first ablatum of the Blood Flame Order from his experience in the inner world. But the virtual brain system and its user manual possessed the ability to research and judge. That is, if this wasn't an absurd scam set up by his old man. Luo Nan had already confirmed through this period of learning and understanding that the virtual brain system hidden within the external neurons' main function was to serve the creation of the dynamo core and the spirit core. It was more inclined towards practical manufacturing techniques. It didn't have much knowledge regarding configuration design. It was just like how a decorator might not be good at interior design. But the configuration examples within the user manual and the series of configuration design data stored within the virtual brain system were all the most typical, the most characteristic, and the most standard cases. Luo Nan used these cases as a reference to understand the most stringent criteria for judging configurations. What was a qualified configuration, how to discover flaws in a configuration, where problems were easy to occur in complex configurations, and how to make adjustments during concrete production, and so on. These were all extremely valuable parts of the virtual brain system and its accompanying user manual. After many days of reading and learning, Luo Nan's horizons had been greatly broadened from a newbie who didn't understand a thing. At the very least, he possessed the most basic aesthetic ability in this field. Now, he had entered the stage of learning how to walk under the support of the system. There was a proper term for this stage. It was called having high expectations but low ability. Looking at countless cases, Luo Nan felt that his chest was beautiful, but when he truly got down to it, it was a long story. It's time to move the seed imprint over. Luo Nan gave an order to Mo Luan, who was hiding in the depths of the void. Mo Luan's current soul body of black smoke had already reached the acme of concealment as a pure energy construct. He quietly extracted the wreckage of the electromagnetic Vanguard 1 from the depths of the lava without alarming the Vulcan ant colony. Under Luo Nan's instructions, Mo Luan tore away the useless parts of the wreckage, leaving only the head module intact. The virtual brain system drove the Divine Binding Hoop module to realize a self-inspection interface refresh. Right now, the head armor played the role of a protective shell. According to the results of the self-inspection, the outer tantalum alloy armor was perfectly preserved. Luo Nan was relieved as he ordered Mo Luan to place the helmet into the lake of lava in the forest of stone lava. After the helmet entered the lake, it floated in the center of the lake of lava, rolling endlessly. Right now, the color of the boiling lava in the area of the lake of lava in the forest of stone lava was quite distinct from other areas. The color inside grew brighter and brighter. It gradually turned from dark red to bright red, orange, golden yellow, and finally suffused with white light. Dark veins of blood seeped through the interior. This meant that the temperature of the lake of lava was rising. Basically, the temperature of the lava exposed to the air was 1,300 degrees at most. But under high pressure and other special environments, it was a different story. For example, right now, the Divine Binding Hoop self-inspection interface instantly sent back the temperature information of 1,700 degrees. This was due to the special configuration of the Blood-Soul Temple. After absorbing Luo Nan's soul strength and many other layers of energy, it had an interference effect on the plane of reality. In such an environment, the harassment and infiltration of the Vulcan ants could be avoided. The seed imprint could also learn how to efficiently absorb and utilize energy. It could gradually mold and restore the powerful structure and instinct that originated from the golden tree. Luo Nan went to look at the data of the helmet armor. The research and development of the tantalum alloy was originally for the purpose of probing the surface of the sun. It could withstand a high temperature of over 5,000 degrees. This military material had to take into account more performance indicators. There were some trade-offs. The current upper limit of the helmet's heat resistance was approximately 4,000 degrees. The upper limit of the heat insulation was 2,000 degrees. It was absolutely safe. The magnetic energy core inside would not be destroyed. But the problem was that complete heat insulation was not right. Why is the magma lake only 1,700 degrees? Luo Nan smacked his head with his notebook. As mentioned before, Luo Nan did not find any basis for the true structure of the Blood-Soul Temple from the Blood Flame Order. He completely relied on the virtual brain system and the user manual. He gradually estimated the input data and used its simulation calculation function to re-estimate the design. The virtual brain system was very powerful, but Luo Nan was a complete armchair strategist. The specifics would depend on the actual situation. Looking at the temperature of the core of the magma lake, there was still a problem. The energy needed to restore the golden tree seed imprint to its peak state was undoubtedly astronomical. At the same time, there must be an efficient mode to control this astronomical amount of energy. Both were indispensable. Luo Nan had painstakingly built the forward base and assembled electromagnetic Vanguard 1. He had gone in a large circle to bring it over. He had squeezed out and revived its combat instincts to the greatest degree. He had cultivated it externally and strengthened it internally in preparation for its rapid growth. For this reason, he followed the basic design of the Blood-Soul Temple to simulate and improve a set of gradual absorption and utilization of energy. The front was fine, but there was a problem with the absorption and utilization of heat energy. The efficiency had to be cut by at least half. Could it be that the interference strength isn't enough? But if I were to increase it further, the thermal efficiency coefficient would be too ugly. In the end, I still haven't broken through the critical point. Luo Nan had to admit that there was still a problem with his design. He had the calculation formula, the system simulator, and all sorts of cases to refer to, but he still couldn't do it well. This was a bit shameful. There was nothing he could do even if it was shameful. Right now, he could only verify and calculate anew to see if there were any problems with the modified configuration design from before. This made the work even more complicated. It was even more difficult than attacking the fire god ant nest. Luo Nan calculated until the sky was dark and the earth was dark under the double blockade of the calculation formula and the structure. He was completely unaware of the passage of time. Perhaps he slept in the middle, or perhaps he didn't. In any case, he was muddle-headed. His mind suddenly stirred, and a moment later, the alarm of the simulator rang. Someone came in. It was Rui-1. Luo Nan slapped the notebook against his head. He decided to go out and get some fresh air. When the simulator opened, he saw a little girl carrying a food container that was over half a meter tall. She was waiting outside. Oh my, thanks. Luo Nan first revealed a smile. Then he came to a realization. Didn't you say that I don't need to deliver food? Breakfast. Rui-1 responded simply. Oh, it's morning already. Luo Nan looked at his watch. It was already 8:30 in the morning on the 22nd. Countless formulas and basic structures spun before Luo Nan's eyes. Comparatively speaking, the feeling of his stomach was more real, especially after he saw the half-meter-tall multi-layered food container. He was really hungry. Chapter 605. Just come over. There are a lot of people up there. Oh, the Mystic Arts Research Society has begun to arrange a theme for this week. This wasn't the main point. Luo Nan understood that Rui Wen was saying that there were a lot of people in gear right now, so she had traveled through space without going through the security system's inspection. The little girl certainly had this ability, but how did the food box and the food inside come together? He removed the lid. It was quite sturdy. Then there was the breakfast inside. Porridge, side dishes, and sliced beef. This was his favorite combination, and the amount was sufficient. But thinking about how they were mixed and vibrated in the void, then categorized and reorganized. This seemed to have already exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's thinking. Luo Nan gave up on thinking deeply under Rui Wen's gaze. In any case, he had never really figured out Rui Wen's mysterious gift. Breakfast and whatnot, as long as it could fill his stomach, it was fine. If he really put in a piece of wood or porcelain or something, with his 9 apertures and 6 roots technique to strengthen his internal organs, his life would not be in danger. After confirming that Rui Wen had already eaten, Luo Nan began to sweep through the food box. But he hadn't eaten 2 bites when the God-binding hoop's real-time tracking detection reported abnormal information. And the simulation results of the virtual brain system still differed from the ideal value. Luo Nan subconsciously opened the design blueprint and looked at the critical points that the system criticized as missing. He scratched his ears and cheeks and tried to make some changes, but he nearly caused the disastrous consequences of collapsing. He was scared to the point of breaking out in a cold sweat, but he was even more unwilling. He simply straightened out the design from the beginning, and then he plunged headfirst into it, unable to pull himself out. He came back to his senses once more because the light shone onto Rui Wen's body when he expanded the area of the projection work area. Right now the little girl was hugging her knees as she sat in the corner. She was in a daze silently, and the tidy food box was placed next to her. She had already done her utmost to avoid interference, but the projection light instantly expanded outward. She couldn't react in time. Luo Nan froze and stopped writing. You didn't go back. Today is the weekend, right? Auntie and Mo ya didn't drag you out to go shopping. I told you. I was with you. I told Auntie. Luo Nan's self-service translation was on point, but he sweated a bit. Rui Wen's explanation clearly conflicted with his reason for taking a day off. She was certainly allowed because Mrs. Luo Shuqing had her eyes closed. He looked at his watch and was shocked to find that it was already past 10. The little girl had been huddled in the corner for half the morning without a word. Luo Nan let out a sigh. He felt that he owed her quite a bit, but he was a bit delighted in his heart. Clearly, Rui Wen was closer to him. Oh, this was even more unfair to her. He made up his mind, closed his notebook, and temporarily cleared his mind of calculations and simulated configurations. He pondered on how to take Rui Wen out to play and relax, but where? Just as he was hesitating, Rui Wen's eyes focused. Is it very difficult to calculate? Luo Nan was a girl of. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed, but he still honestly admitted, it really is quite difficult. Although we have the simulation system and the configuration module, there are too many other systems in the Blood-Soul Temple. It's fine on the spiritual level, but when it comes to the material level, we have to replace them one by one and even reorganize them. This is too much, and it's not easy to take care of everything. Luo Nan had a belly full of bitterness from the recent mental challenge. He opened his mouth and couldn't hold it back. He said a bunch of things in a muffled voice. Only after a while did he realize that something was wrong. He saw Rui Wen's earnest but not necessarily clear eyes, and he slapped himself in the face. He was quite a good-for-nothing. He had poured a pile of emotional garbage onto the little girl. Luo Nan hurriedly stopped, cough. It's just a minor detail. Don't mind it. Rui Wen continued to stare at him. What's the main point? Oh my. She even knows how to ask a question. Luo Nan was a bit surprised. He pondered for a moment before answering seriously. The main goal is purification. Purification of the cloud world. He opened his mouth and his emotions came back. He began to gesture, the cloud world. I told you about it, right? It's the place where that big monkey came from. Rui Wen looked as if she understood, but she didn't. Luo Nan knew that it would be very troublesome to explain in detail. Oh, it just so happened that he needed to accompany Rui Wen. Chatting and exchanging would count, right? Wait a moment for me. Flag bearer. Luo Nan prepared to go all out. He awakened the military AI of the laboratory and searched the database for materials, organizing them. A few minutes later, Luo Nan turned off most of the laboratory's lighting. He adjusted the projector and entered playback mode. The pitch-black space became the best background, revealing a gorgeous starry sky. Under Luo Nan's control, the projection screen gradually enlarged and focused. More and more details appeared in this starry sky, from the Milky Way to the Orion Arm, to the Gould Belt, to the local bubble, to the interstellar cloud, all the way to the solar system and Earth. Every time Luo Nan looked at this set of star material, he would have the marvelous feeling of being insignificant and jumping about. This was even more so after he received the external neuron. His mind became more and more subtly blurred as he let his mind wander. His mind wandered. However, Rui Wen was also lost in thought. It looked like she was very interested in this set of star atlases. Perhaps this little girl would become an astronomer in the future. All right, this was also his imagination. It was paternalistic. Luo Nan calmed his mind. After the irregular blue sphere of water, the Earth, occupied the central position, he picked up his digital pen and drew a few dotted lines on the edge of the sphere. Under the effect of the simulation engine, a blurry section of two bubbles, colliding and warping was formed. At the other end of the section, Luo Nan used a gentle brush technique to outline smooth lines. It was like a dense weave of flowing clouds, spreading out layer by layer. This is the cloud world. Right now it is colliding and making contact with the space and time we are in. This is the marvelous space and time anchored by our mother. Yes, our mother anchored this place. This is a place that I must explore and protect. Luo Nan looked at Rui Wen's focused gaze as he spoke to this point. He was a bit embarrassed. Instilling this sort of emotional thing into a child didn't seem too appropriate. He organized his train of thought and directly led to the main topic. Right now in the cloud world, there are two enemies of mine. It's probably because of my mistake that they managed to break in. One of them is extremely powerful and extremely hard to deal with. He wanted to plot against me before. And I don't want him to ruin my mother's work. So I want to get rid of him. Hold on, it seems like this direction isn't too good. But Luo Nan thought about Jin Tong, who died by Rui Wen's hand. He chanted an Amitabha and braced himself to continue speaking. He had been monitoring Gong Qi and Snake Tongue for a very long time through the soul cloak. He understood some details that he wasn't too clear about before. For example, Gong Qi wanted to get rid of him through the veil of silence. Or the complicated relationship between Snake Tongue and Gong Qi. After straightening things out, he explained the cause and effect to Rui Wen. His reasoning was quite clear. At the very least, he felt that Rui Wen should understand him. Rui Wen did understand. She gazed at the sketch of the cloud world drawn by Luo Nan and asked softly, "Is that person more powerful than Jin Tong?" Luo Nan thought for a moment and said, "You can't compare it like this. Jin Tong is on the fleshly side, while Gong Qi is on the mental side. Before we got rid of Jin Tong, Her Majesty Empress Wu had already beaten him to a pulp. A huge flaw was revealed in his mental state. That's why you and the Wraith Sign attacked him from the inside and outside, taking his life in an instant. Although Gong Qi's soul and fleshly body have been forcibly separated, he still retains the majority of his abilities. He has maintained quite a bit of patience these past few months. Even if he loses his balance for a moment, he will be able to quickly adjust. As for us, it's impossible for us to find someone like Her Majesty Empress Wu with combat strength. After all, I don't want the secret of the Cloud World to be known by outsiders. Rui Wen didn't speak anymore. This meant that she understood everything. Luo Nan began to rotate the blue ball of water in the projection area after clarifying his goal. This projection image was actually a holographic model of the Earth from the military's database. Aside from the optical imaging satellite, it also involved many confidential basic surveying and mapping data. Its precision and accuracy were worthy of trust. If Luo Nan wanted to, he could completely focus this holographic projection onto any region of the globe. The average resolution could reach around 5 mm, and there wouldn't be too much distortion. Right now, his destination was a certain volcanic archipelago in the Pacific Ocean. It was the Chan City region where the headquarters of the Ability User Society was located. If we want to make a move against Gong Qi, we must first place our focus here. This is the place where Gong Qi's fleshly body is stored. This is the place. Right now, the terrain displayed is undesirable. Headquarters should have done something to it, but they never imagined that our Luo family's formatting theory combined with the condensation ring would have such an astonishing effect. Luo Nan spoke loftily. He had already entered a state of complete immersion. He pointed at the topographic map of the volcanic archipelago and spoke without end. These words had been bottled up in his heart for far too long. He never had the chance to pour them out. Even if it was impossible for Rui Wen to give him any advice, she was undoubtedly a qualified listener. To a speaker, that focused and earnest gaze was simply an incomparable enjoyment. My plan is to first use the Wraith Sign's Polar Domain Blood Soul Cannon, just like Luo Yuan's Dimensional Crossbow. I'll instantly break through the defenses and directly eliminate Gong Qi's fleshly body. I'll seize the energy of his fleshly body. Then, I'll take advantage of the attack against Gong Qi and the maturing Jin Tong puppet to immediately return to Shi Yunduan and surround him with all my might. If everything goes smoothly, then we'll have an extraordinary level meat shield like Jin Tong. We'll have Yuan X and Mo Luen to interfere. We can basically recreate the scene when we killed Jin Tong. In the end, Rui Wen, you'll be the one to make the final decision. Of course, these are just plans on paper. We might need to make adjustments when we actually carry them out. Rui Wen listened attentively and even asked, "Practice is preparation." Luo Nan knew that Rui Wen was talking about the offensive and defensive practice of the Blood Intent Ring in the Abyss region these past few days. This was the operation he was proud of. Yeah. Ghost Eye is also a mental type extraordinary. His fleshly body is in the open sea. The practice in Xia City is all on the mental plane. It's quite similar to Gong Qi's situation. Rui Wen nodded in understanding. I will work hard. Chapter 606. Seeing Rui Wen's super serious appearance, Luo Nan couldn't help but rub her head. The little girl's hair had just grown to around 10 centimeters. It was a bit manly, but it was soft to the touch. It was as if there was nothing there. It matched her slender figure quite well. She had the appearance of a girl worthy of protection. Oh, protection. This thought came suddenly, but it reminded Luo Nan once again, even if Rui Wen's talent was unparalleled, she was at most 13 or 14 years old. Her mental age would only be younger. This sort of matter shouldn't involve her. Needless to say, the link she was involved in was critical and dangerous. Instantly deciding life and death with an extraordinary. How many people in this world could do this? The more he thought, the more ashamed Luo Nan felt in his heart. He subconsciously held the back of Rui Wen's neck lightly, making the little girl lean a bit closer. He spoke very seriously, Rui Wen. Remember this. All you need to do is repeat that attack against Jin Tong. I will do my utmost to prepare everything else. We need to make sure that nothing goes wrong before we execute the final step. Otherwise, even the tiniest flaw will be pushed back. There's no need for us to take risks with that old bastard Gong Qi. We're still young. We can forcefully outlast him to death. We just need to be able to do this before he unravels the secrets of the cloud world. Luo Nan's words were more like a frame for himself when he spoke to the end. He could already feel it, but the growing emotions in his heart pushed him to complete this promise. Rui Wen was a bit stupefied by Luo Nan's long string of words. Her eyes looked over in a daze. Luo Nan also felt that his words were a bit too heavy. He hurriedly changed the direction and method of the topic. He chatted about some of the links and measures in his plan. There's a lot of work to be done on the details to complete the plan. Take the Wraith Signs Cannon and the Polar Domain for example. It's not easy to blow up the fleshly body of an extraordinary, even if it's just a psychic. I've looked up the relevant information. Actually, there really isn't much difference between extraordinary in terms of fleshly body strength. There are even some psychic extraordinary who don't have the requirements of flexibility, toughness, and reaction. They can operate their fleshly body into a fortress. In terms of pure defensive power, they are even more exaggerated than some fleshly bodies. Therefore, the shell must possess a certain amount of strength. It must have the ability to instantly penetrate and destroy Gong Qi's fleshly body. I chose Jin Tong's seed imprint because I valued its potential. It could instantly absorb Gong Qi's physical energy to strengthen itself. If everything went smoothly, it could also be used to kill Gong Qi. Of course, it wasn't strong enough at the moment. All I wanted to do was to charge it up to at least B+. It would be even better if it could reach A+. However, the energy needed for the conversion process was astronomical. Sigh, at first I was hunting in the cloud world. The life energy of the mush-mouth ape was very pure. It was a pity that the seed imprint's instincts were not dug deep enough, and he could not control it, wasting a lot. Furthermore, the more I hunt, the bigger the commotion will be. Gong Qi is extremely sensitive over there, and I'm worried about being discovered, so I can only replenish on Earth. Now I'm here. Luo Nan rotated the virtual Earth to return to the Eurasian continent from the Pacific Ocean. He locked onto the volcanic region 2,000 kilometers away. It's here. This place has a closer connection to the cloud world. It's suitable to build a tunnel to deliver resources and equipment. That's why we chose this place. As for the suitable environment, that was a pleasant surprise. Luo Nan enlarged the projected image as he spoke, letting Rui Wen see even more details. This included not only the topography of the volcanic region, but also the relationship between the map of the cloud world and this region. Do you see? I didn't just randomly scribble. This region is actually the intersection point of the cloud world and the space-time collision contact of Earth. I have discovered 2 such intersection points on Earth. One is here, and the other is the region of Xia City where we are located. It's not Gear. It's 300 to 400 kilometers outside the city. Gear's situation is a bit special. It is the core gear that my mother constructed. Its purpose is to act as a fulcrum, to anchor the clouds across space. It's not the same thing as a space-time collision. Oh, maybe it has a bit of an impact. Luo Nan really didn't dare to make a conclusion. Why did the cloud world and Xia City have such a fate? Perhaps Gear could be considered an explanation. He was stunned for a moment, but he finally remembered that Ruewen was still listening to his explanation. He coughed and went back on track. In short, the cloud world is currently leaving the volcanic region. Xia City is gradually approaching. Given the clear crustal activity in the volcanic region and the recent earthquake in Xia City, I suspect that it is closely related to this sort of space-time collision contact. Having said this, Luo Nan was worried that Ruewen might not be able to understand if he spoke too deeply. He asked, "Do you understand? Don't you find it boring?" Ruewen didn't respond. She just stared at the projected image. Her eyes didn't even blink. It was great to have an audience like this. Luo Nan was satisfied to see Ruewen's attitude, regardless of whether she understood or not. Of course, he did his best to make things more interesting. "It's right here. The location I'm pointing at is 1,000 meters underground. I discovered a fire god ant nest. It has a unique social ecosystem and the surrounding environment of lava. It is extremely helpful for the conversion and utilization of energy. I've even set up the Blood Soul Temple there. It's the one that just tormented people. It was originally just a structure on the mental plane. I personally modified and designed the structure in order to realize it on the real plane. Unfortunately, there are many problems right now. The most annoying ones are the internal pressure and temperature." Luo Nan talked about the design of the lava lake in the stone forest. Even though he was singing a one-man show from beginning to end, as long as he had Ruewen's focused gaze, he would be in high spirits. He was still not satisfied after he finished talking about the lava lake. Luo Nan chatted with Ruewen about the special environment of the volcanic area. The fire god ant nest is probably the most complex structure that can be constructed out of all the known mutants. The height of its core area is equivalent to a 200 to 300-story skyscraper. Each branch structure controls an area with a radius of over 100 kilometers. Within this area, it can also control other mutants to serve it. It is the overlord of the volcanic area in name and in reality. I've read related papers. It should be through the hormones it secretes that it reacts with a certain parasitic fungus in the volcanic area. The resulting compound acts as a medium to realize this function. If it weren't for the fact that their collective consciousness hasn't developed over the years and that they have a fatal weakness in energy control, Spring City would probably have to migrate. You don't know how dangerous it was when I controlled the electromagnetic Vanguard one to kill my way through. I was lucky enough to discover a fissure created by an earthquake in time, bypassing the most difficult 10 kilometers. Otherwise, I might not have been able to kill my way to the center of the nest when you came this morning." Luo Nan spoke excitedly. He used his sketching ability to draw a corresponding sketch in the projection work area. Unfortunately, it wasn't as detailed as the virtual Earth model. He could only make do with looking at it. If everything goes smoothly, the second and third floors of the Blood Soul Temple will be constructed in another 50 to 70 hours. I will attempt to cultivate the collective consciousness of the fire god ants and place them within the Blood Soul Temple. With the help of the Wraith sign, there should be a way. If I really succeed, then I can attempt to control the entire fire god ant colony. When the time comes, this volcanic area will become a kingdom under my control." Luo Nan spoke with great vigor, but he felt that the meaning of the joke was a bit thicker. Conquering an ant society. When the time comes, I can say that I'm the king of the fire god ants. Cough. This name is more like that, but don't laugh at me. When the time comes, you'll be the fire god ant princess. Ruewen didn't laugh. She just stared at him with her pitch-black eyes. Luo Nan was truly embarrassed. He hurriedly denied himself, forget it, forget it. The cloud world is more suitable for us. Over there, the clouds cover the sky. You can't see the end. Countless secrets are hidden there. Wait until we smoothly eliminate the opening of the palace and purify that place. Then I can say that I'm the king of the clouds. And what about you? The princess of the clouds, okay. He told a clumsy joke, but Ruiwen seemed to like it a lot. Her gaze was a bit vacant. It was as if her gaze pierced through the multicolored projection, pierced through the earth and the sky, and pointed 2,000 kilometers away. It also pointed behind the barrier of space and time. The meaning in her eyes was perhaps longing. This sort of Ruiwen was far too rare. It was to the extent that Luo Nan instantly understood this mood. He blurted out a few words, "Do you want to go?" Ruiwen suddenly turned her head. She didn't speak, but her eyes lit up. Luo Nan had a headache the moment the words left his mouth. But when he saw Ruiwen's dazzling eyes in an instant, his impulsiveness and headache transformed into formal consideration. His brain spun at lightning speed, and his thoughts directly transformed into words. He didn't bother with embellishment. The fire god ant nest is too dangerous. There's no place to stay for now. It's not suitable for you to go. However, we can first go to the cloud world. Ruiwen stared at him, the glow in her eyes growing brighter and brighter. Actually, it's quite difficult for me to go to the cloud world by myself. I'm talking about going by myself. It's quite difficult for me to go there by myself because I can't fly. I'll just be like a rock. I'll keep falling down. But you can. The more Luo Nan spoke, the more he felt that it was reliable. With your ability to merge body and soul, as long as you have my support, it's not much different from truly flying. There's absolutely no problem for a short period of time. Do you want to go? It seemed that Ruiwen had already forgotten to speak. She just stared at Luo Nan's face. First she blinked her eyes. Only when she saw that Luo Nan still had a smiling face did she subtly lower her head. She waited for Luo Nan to confirm that the words that came out of Luo Nan's mouth would not change. She finally increased the scope of her movements and nodded forcefully. At the same time, a smile spread across both sides of her cheeks, completely softening the contours of the muscles and bones of her face. Not a single bit was held back. In this instant, what Luo Nan saw was the purest expression of emotions he had ever seen in his life. She was like a pure and innocent infant, and there was an additional touch of moving color. Chapter 607. The astral winds whistled and the clouds surged. Occasionally, a shower of ice crystals would blow past, reflecting the firelight that seeped through the gaps between the clouds. It was dazzling and possessed destructive power. Luo Nan felt quite marvelous as he watched the ice crystal shards penetrate his body. Recently, he mostly used the soul cloak to observe the cloud world from afar, monitoring the whereabouts of Gong Qi and Snake Tongue. Firstly, it was convenient. Secondly, it was safe. Today, his soul entered the out-of-body state, and he especially interfered with the clouds to form a half-real, half-incorporeal water vapor humanoid. He felt a bit of novelty when he first used it. If he was like this, then there was no need to mention Ruiwen, who entered for the first time. The little girl's figure flickered back and forth between the clouds, appearing and disappearing erratically. She was still adapting to the feeling of flying through the air. Occasionally, Luo Nan would need to interfere with the void to lend her strength. However, seeing her more and more agile and free performance, it seemed that flying unhindered through the clouds and leaving no traces behind wouldn't be an obstacle that was difficult to surpass in the near future. Thinking too much is useless. Being in a good mood is truly good. Luo Nan took care of Ruiwen as he split a bit of his attention to lock onto two targets several thousand kilometers away. Right now, Gong Qi and Snake Tongue were together. They seemed to be studying a mushed-mouth ape. This was a living body that they had caught with great difficulty. Controlling it was quite troublesome. Snake Tongue was a B-rank curse mage. She didn't possess an overwhelming advantage when compared to the mushed-mouth ape. She was tossed around quite a bit when she was alone in the cloud world. Hee hee. Luo Nan sneered. Rui Wen suddenly hovered in the air at this time, coming to a steady stop by his side. The structure of her body and soul formed an intense resonant relationship with the surrounding clouds of the void. It caused Luo Nan's water vapor humanoid form to distort a bit, but it soon began to decrease in magnitude. It was even more restrained and restrained. 10 seconds later, it was nearly impossible to detect unless one deliberately probed. Ha! You can fly now. I'm still trying. Rui Wen gave a simple answer. Her slender figure undulated a bit as she enunciated her words. 2 seconds later, she stabilized. Do your best. Luo Nan could only express this way when faced with Rui Wen's talent. Next, Luo Nan took advantage of Rui Wen's time to adapt to her new technique to begin his work as a commentator. He shared the scene of his perception through a closed system. It's these two. Our targets. As they spoke, Snake Tongue attempted to hypnotize and control the captured mush-mouth ape with Gong Chi's help. However, what awaited her was yet another failure. This wasn't the first time a similar situation had occurred. This made Luo Nan deeply feel that the day he caught the Wraith sign would be the day his luck attribute would go off the charts. Luo Nan gave Rui Wen an explanation of what Gong Chi and Snake Tongue were currently doing. In the end, he even went into a deeper analysis. Actually, Gong Chi opening this project and giving Snake Tongue the opportunity to control the mush-mouth ape might not be out of good intentions. He needs to find something for Snake Tongue to do. Remember, I said that these two people's situations are different. Both of them are trapped, but Snake Tongue has been misled by Gong Chi. She believes that Gong Chi can come and go at any time. She was fine before, but after being trapped in the clouds for 2 months, Snake Tongue's patience is about to run out. What replaced it is suspicion. If Gong Chi can't bring out something new, we might be able to see them turn on each other. Actually, Luo Nan had thought of using this matter to make a fuss. However, after some consideration, he felt that this wasn't his domain of expertise. Playing schemes with Gong Chi and Snake Tongue might alert the enemy and make things worse, so he didn't delve too deeply into it. Right now he was paying more attention to the technical segment. There were many problems he needed to solve if he wanted to kill Gong Chi. This fellow Gong Chi has the ability to teleport his soul body. I once saw him leap 2,000 kilometers in one go. He's extremely powerful. If we can't succeed in our first attack, he will very likely escape. Of course, we aren't bad either. But if the ambush turns into a chase, the variables will be too great. Rui Wen floated to the side and expressed once more, I will do my best. No. This segment is mainly testing me. It's the problem of my control precision. Luo Nan didn't want Rui Wen to add more pressure to herself. And it was just as he said. If he wanted to do a good job in the ambush, then he needed to completely play out all of his resource cards in the shortest amount of time possible. Moreover, he needed to accurately hit Gong Chi-Chi's old face. Precision was the most crucial and direct requirement. It was even more important and more difficult than the strength of the artillery shell. The artillery strike that destroyed Gong Chi-Chi's fleshly body in Chan City needed to be closely synchronized with the assault in the cloud world. The Jin Tong seed imprint needed to accurately hit Gong Chi-Chi's fleshly body, which was under the layers of protection of headquarters. It needed to accurately grasp the time to seize the energy of Gong Chi-Chi's fleshly body. Then it would accurately jump back to the clouds and join the ranks of those who surrounded and killed Gong Chi. Any mistake in any segment would cause unexpected problems to crop up and produce variables. To put it bluntly, Luo Nan's plan wasn't perfect. Its tolerance for error was far too low. The possibility of interference was far too high. It was far too easy to lose control. But this was the only opportunity he could think of. It was also the only way to squeeze out all of Gong Chi-Chi's strength. Luo Nan's heart was apprehensive, but he had no way of telling this feeling to anyone. Luckily, he had Rui Wen. He had the best listener in the world. Right now, I can only use the observation and positioning of the large coordinate system to carry out the interference effect. Did I say the large coordinate system before? Oh, this is the name I came up with. I just comprehended it not too long ago. It can be considered my extraordinary domain, even though I'm not an extraordinary. It's using me as the origin and the body and soul order frame as the core law. I embed my own law within the interference area. Right now, my soul cloak has already covered nearly the entire Earth. Even though I can't receive all information at the same time, if I focus my mind, I can pour my attention to any point in the coverage area at any time. Once I realize it, I can do it. It looks very simple, right? But it's super difficult to actually do it. Luo Nan met Rui Wen's gaze and subconsciously extended his hand. He drew a draft diagram of space-time interference amidst the surging clouds. There are times when human strength is limited. It doesn't matter which side of space-time it is, the unchanging laws of physics still hold the absolute dominant position. I'm not the creator. I have no way of fighting against the structure of space-time. If I want to temporarily distort the laws of physics in the relevant area, I must satisfy many conditions on top of the foundation of a powerful energy output. Every missing condition will cause the energy output to increase exponentially until it exceeds the limits of my ability. Over. Chapter 608. With the number of extraordinaries and their reactions over at Chan City. Even if the polar domain cannon succeeds in seizing the energy from Gong Chi's fleshly body, it will still be very difficult to drag the Jin Tong puppet back to the clouds and precisely place it next to Gong Chi. Luo Nan drew circles on the Tan City region as he spoke. Soon, the sketch was completely unrecognizable. He felt that he had lost his composure a bit. He shook his head and turned his face to see Rui Wen's particularly serious expression. TSK, even a little girl doesn't look favorably upon me. Actually, the pressure in Luo Nan's heart had been dispelled quite a bit with the narration just now. He actually laughed when he saw Rui Wen's appearance. He extended his hand to stroke the little girl's head. Rui Wen's hair was fine, smooth, and soft. It was like silk and muslin. Even though Luo Nan was in an out-of-body state, interfering with the water vapor of the void to take human form, the sensation of her hair was still wonderful. Don't be nervous. Have a bit of confidence in me, okay? Luo Nan didn't want Rui Wen to worry, so he changed the topic. Don't look at how difficult the matter is. It's not impossible. Otherwise, why would I be single-mindedly thinking about smashing my head against the wall? Rui Wen raised her head slightly, allowing the half-real, half-incorporeal hand of water vapor to brush through her hair. Her eyes were still staring at Luo Nan, not blinking at all. Luo Nan felt that he should demonstrate his strength. He erased the sketches floating in the clouds and drew a new set of images. It was a 3D image of a seemingly ordinary gear. Using this as a foundation, he sketched out the lines and rendered the background. In the time of a few breaths, he had drawn a very familiar architectural scene in the cloud world. Oh, this is the North Coast gear. Our mother's masterpiece. Do you remember what I said? It doesn't belong to the intersection point between the cloud world and our local space-time. But I'm connecting to the cloud world here. The precision of control is the highest when compared to the volcanic region and the wilderness of Xia City. Luo Nan drew the intersection point between the cloud world and local space-time. He gave the other two intersection points disproportionate marks for illustration. Then he asked, knowing the answer. Why is it like this? Gear is the fulcrum that anchors the cloud. Rui Wen really did answer. She was basically repeating Luo Nan's original words. But she was able to extract these words from Luo Nan's large number of explanations in the first instance. It was enough to show that she was listening very seriously. Luo Nan's heart felt warm. He couldn't help but laugh out loud twice. He reached out his hand again and stroked Rui Wen's soft hair. His heart unconsciously rose quite a bit. That's right, gear is the fulcrum that anchors the clouds. How can it do this? That's because our mother used the method of coupling, using herself as the central axis and her own order framework to drive the environmental forces of the surrounding area layer by layer, forming a formless and moving gear set for her use. The surrounding area doesn't just include Xia City, it even includes the space and time of the cloud world. With our mother's ingenious means, the cloud world and the local spacetime opened up a spatial tunnel, creating a special structure that connected the two spacetimes. Luo Nan endlessly drew details on the cloud sketch. He also poured out the results of his research during this time. Normally, gear on the north bank is just an ordinary building. It doesn't have a direct connection with the cloud world. The structure that runs through space and time is fractured. The most crucial link has been extracted. But if we have our Luo family's formatting theory to activate the telescope in the atrium of gear, then we have the external neuron in our hands as a special key. The structure that runs through space and time can be reconnected and reconstructed, recreating this miracle. What do you think? Isn't it awesome? Rui Wen gazed at the constantly perfecting sketch and slowly nodded. Luo Nan grinned. His appearance was a bit odd on the water vapor humanoid, but this wasn't the main point. Right now, he spoke excitedly once more. Gear on the north bank is the best reference for me to increase my precision. You must know that our mother wasn't an ability user. At the very least, she wasn't an especially powerful ability user. She didn't possess an extraordinary domain. She was unable to impose her own laws and rules on the two sides of space and time. But in the end, she was still able to successfully construct the inconceivable spatial tunnel. Moreover, it was still able to maintain its operation many years later. This is, without a doubt, the result of her coupling theory. She used a tiny basic gear to drive a complex structure and an astonishing number of gears. She used a crowbar to pry up the entire Earth. Driven by his emotions, Luo Nan's water vapor humanoid fluctuated a bit. His pen moved even faster. He drew out a few results from observing gear, observing the cloud world, and observing the structure of the spatial tunnel. He already had a certain result. Of course, it couldn't be considered particularly perfect, especially in the aspect of models. Whether it was geometric structure or algebraic structure, he still didn't have a completely self-consistent result. I'm currently searching for a suitable mathematical tool in the virtual brain system. Fine, I admit that this kind of result is a century or two ahead of the times. There should be a few other fulcrums. It won't be easy to thoroughly research it, but it doesn't matter. I can still imitate and reproduce it. If it really doesn't work, I can just copy gear to the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Luo Nan hadn't completely sorted out his later thoughts, so he didn't go into detail. Right now, he was just doing this to pacify Rui Wen's emotions. He didn't forget that he brought Rui Wen to the clouds today to rest and play. Talking about too many serious topics was meaningless, right? At this time, several thousand kilometers away, the two monitoring targets also made some movements. The experiment of controlling the mush-mouth ape had yet to make any progress, so they began to roam and search once more. They probed the structure of space and time in the cloud world, accumulating data and information for their escape. Gong Qi has the ability to teleport. His scouting range is large. We need to maintain a certain distance from him. Oh, but there's no need to worry too much. We'll definitely take the initiative. Luo Nan was prepared to take Rui Wen for a stroll in the cloud world. Though this place was extremely monotonous, it was still a bit interesting to see the churning clouds, the flames rushing to the skies, and the mush-mouth ape flying back and forth. There was a mush-mouth ape approaching at high speed from over 700 kilometers away. This strange demon of the cloud world had the ability to fly untraceable. It just happened to be what Ruewen needed. And he had always felt that the attack methods of this demon were a bit like muddling the body and soul. It was similar to Ruewen's miraculous talent. He just happened to bring this little girl over for reference. Let's go consult the mush-mouth ape's methods. Luo Nan confirmed the target and shared his perspective with Ruewen. He explained in passing, that mush-mouth ape. Isn't it bigger than Yuan X? Actually, Yuan X was like this before. I just tried to move its 2 arms into local space and time, and my soul strength was nearly sucked dry. Ruewen. Chapter 609. Ruewen. Not easy to control. The little girl's lips moved slightly. Were it not for Luo Nan's powerful mental senses, he would not have been able to hear these words clearly. Ha! Luo Nan didn't understand. Not easy to control. Hovering in the air. Oh, you haven't completely learned how to fly yet. Let me lend you some strength. Ruewen shook her head slightly. The environment. It's very difficult. Her voice grew even quieter. It seemed that it was especially strenuous. This was absolutely not the result of not being able to fly. Rather, it was more like being bound by an invisible bird net, restricting her ability to move. Luo Nan really jumped in fright. He hurriedly turned around to see what was going on. But when he extended his hand to touch Ruewen, a low hum rang out. The front of the water vapor humanoid's arm was instantly smacked to pieces by the vibrating vibrations of the void. Luo Nan's out-of-body soul also received the attack due to being in an interference state. His entire body was stupefied. And Ruewen on the other side was like a taut and released elastic that bounced away. Her figure collapsed backward, bouncing 50 meters away in the blink of an eye. Ruewen. At this moment, Luo Nan faintly sensed that there was a problem with the void structure of the cloud world. But he didn't have time to think too much about it. The partial interference of his soul cloak was pulled back. He wanted to protect Ruewen, to prevent her from being injured by any means. The problem was that when his soul cloak tried to exert force by interfering with the material plane, what it touched was a wave of high-speed vibrations of the void string. The scene of the water vapor humanoid's arm collapsing apart a second ago was perfectly replicated in this moment. The pulled-back soul cloak was torn apart by the incorporeal vibrations. Not only was it unable to help Ruewen control her body, it instead stimulated an even greater vibration. It caused Ruewen to turn into a little bird that had lost control. She leaped high and low in the clouds, falling back and forth. She appeared to be particularly excited at first glance, but in reality, she wanted to return to a state of stillness. The scene was actually a bit comical, but neither Luo Nan nor Ruewen were able to laugh. This was like climbing onto a trampoline. If they wanted to stabilize themselves, they had to press down on the collapsing bed, or they had to wait until all of their kinetic energy was exhausted. Fortunately, Ruewen herself was extremely calm. She didn't resist the turbulence of the void. She only adjusted the frequency of her body and soul merging. Layer by layer, she neutralized the impact. The extent of her tumbling became smaller and smaller. Gradually, she was able to control herself. Luo Nan let out a breath of relief. He did not dare to rashly interfere with the surrounding environment and cause more trouble for Ruewen. He simply switched his soul cloak to a pure observational mode, probing the cause of the turbulence in the structure of the void. The structure suddenly became complicated. The space-time structure of the cloud void was different from the space-time of the Earth. Luo Nan knew this. But previously, he was not affected by it. At most, when he was considering the structure of the transspace corridor, he would add 1 or 2 more parameters. But now, in the area around Rue 1, it was as if there were countless randomly vibrating spring pieces. When this layer stopped, another layer stirred up, twisting together and affecting each other, causing the clouds and the void to be thrown into disorder. There was no doubt that there was a problem with the deep spacetime structure. It was only because Luo Nan had the clairvoyance method of the large coordinate system that he was more sensitive to the curvature of spacetime and structure. He was able to discover the blurry and complex details within. After no less than 20 seconds, Rue Wen's figure stabilized again. The little girl looked left and right. She moved her hands and feet lightly, and there was a clear correction in the frequency of her body and soul muddling. Only then was she certain that she had broken free from the disturbance of the spacetime structure. Rue Wen still did not dare to move even now. She floated in the middle of the flowing clouds, casting her gaze over a distance of over 100 meters. Her body was restrained. She was like a child who was aware that she had caused a great disaster. Her expression was one of rarely seen fear and pity. Luo Nan flew over in a hurry. He subconsciously extended his hand, wanting to confirm whether or not she was injured. Halfway through, he discovered that it was inappropriate. He could only caress the little girl's forehead and brush aside the messy hair on her forehead. He asked hurriedly, "Are you hurt?" Rue Wen subconsciously avoided his gaze. It seemed that she was a bit afraid of him. This was a very rare situation. Luo Nan was worried and baffled. "What's going on? Where are you hurt? There's no precision." "What?" This was the first time Luo Nan felt that Rue Wen and he were not on the same wavelength. If this continued, he could only touch her. Rue Wen simply buried her head under Luo Nan's gaze. Her voice became even deeper and a bit hoarse. "The structure here is too complex. It's very hard to have precision in an assassination." "You?" Luo Nan was stupefied. Even though his soul was in an out-of-body state, he still felt an intense trembling sensation. He asked subconsciously, "Precision? You can't control it. Is it hard to display your body and soul fusion in this place?" "When I jump." Rue Wen's words were incomplete, but Luo Nan still understood. "Normal movement is fine. But if it's like when you killed Jin Tong, can't you jump through space?" Rue Wen buried her head even lower. She didn't make another sound, but it was clear that she was tacitly agreeing. Luo Nan was really stupefied. At this moment, the heart of his main body, which was far beneath gear, was about to jump out of his chest. The scene of Rue Wen struggling to adapt to the void in the clouds came before his eyes. That's right. Luo Nan had guessed it. Rue Wen should have wanted to attempt to jump through space. But when she used the form of body and soul fusion to interact with the clouds and the void, the structure of space and time manifested an extremely astonishing complexity. It brought Rue Wen far too many disturbances. It destroyed the stable rhythm of her body and soul fusion. There was no need to say what happened next. How could it be like this? Gong Qi. What about Gong Qi? Gong Qi also had the ability to jump through space and teleport. But why didn't he have any problems? Luo Nan pondered it over and over again. He felt that there was only one reason. Gong Qi came in the form of an out-of-body state. Snake Tongue, who he often brought along with him, was the same. Perhaps the astonishingly complicated disturbances and changes like Rue Wen's would not occur if she used the form of pure energy to shuttle through space and time. Otherwise, she could be like the mush-mouth ape. She could fly purely with her fleshly body, not involving techniques like the void shuttle. But why didn't any problems occur when he used the airdrop to transport supplies through the cloud world? Well, it was useless to think about these things. The crux of the matter was, what to do, what to do, what to do. Luo Nan's mind was a chaotic mess at this very moment. Rui Wen only appeared for 1/10 of a second or even 100th of a second in his entire plan. But she was the deciding force of victory. If a problem occurred in this segment, then all his other plans would become a joke. Luo Nan's mind was spinning in circles, but Rui Wen's whisper reached his ear. "I can do it." Ha! Luo Nan wasn't able to react in time. And at this time, the water vapor forearm formed from interference trembled once more. It was suddenly bounced away by the tyrannical shockwave from Rui Wen's body. Rui Wen. Luo Nan shuddered. He subconsciously wanted to exert force, but he fell half a step behind. The little girl's figure was like a fragile bubble, vanishing between his fingers. Luo Nan understood what Rui Wen wanted to do right now, even if he was an idiot. The little girl actually wanted to forcefully practice the void shuttle. Did she really think that the structure of space and time was a trampoline? Luo Nan's thoughts flashed, and he heard an extremely subtle shattering sound come from the surrounding mist. It was completely different from the pure vibrations of the structure of space and time before. This time, his scalp really exploded. He wanted to use the soul cloak to forcefully interfere, but he was worried that it would backfire on him. He could only shout over and over again, "Stop! Rui Wen! Stop!" Rui Wen didn't listen to his command. Her figure just flashed within Luo Nan's sensing range before disappearing. Then she continued to flash and disappear in the surroundings like a flying phantom. Reality was hard to distinguish. Buzz! 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 Luo Nan wasn't too sure about the specific structure of the surrounding space and time. But the rumbling sound, which was continuously pushed higher and higher, struck directly at his heart. It was as if it could become a warning sound of collapse and destruction at any moment. Luo Nan stomped his feet in anxiety, but he was simply unable to stop Rui Wen from practicing. He could only use his mental senses to lock onto Rui Wen's figure with all his might. He watched as she shuttled through the void, controlling the landing point of her figure with difficulty. Rui Wen only needed to adapt to a single structural frequency with each jump on Earth. But right now, she pierced through a layer, and then another layer followed. She was strong and weak, fast and slow, and they were even diametrically opposed. The complex, fragmented, and irregular structural pattern made one simply go crazy just by watching. The more Luo Nan watched, the more worried he became. He couldn't care about anything else. He shouted at Rui Wen, let's pause. Pause, okay. I can. Rui Wen's voice was small and trembling. She still didn't listen to Luo Nan's command, and her voice clearly carried subtle emotions. Luo Nan never expected that Rui Wen would actually have such a stubborn and rebellious side to her. He could only lock onto Rui Wen's figure and earnestly persuade her, let's go back. Let's go back and find some time to do systematic practice, okay? We need to do some preliminary research first. Don't forget that I'm the guide. You'll be fine, but I won't be able to if a problem occurs. We need to solve this matter together. Rui Wen responded 2 seconds later, but there was no change in her voice. I can do it. Rui Wen. Luo Nan was practically roaring. This time, what answered him was an even more intense trembling in the surrounding void. The turbulent shock waves even traveled several hundred kilometers away, twisting the clouds and causing them to scatter and shatter. The shock waves possessed an even greater impact force in the central region. Luo Nan's water vapor figure suddenly froze on the spot. It was severely warped and deformed. His consciousness seemed to have been cut into several pieces, turning upside down and in disorder. At the same time, he clearly sensed a cacophony. It was so discordant and ear-piercing. But in the next second, the vibration became smooth. It was as if someone was plucking the strings of a zither from the depths of the clouds. It was excessively deep, making it impossible to hear the true melody. But the smooth, graceful, and orderly vibration cut through the whistling clouds and astral winds. It transmitted into Luo Nan's soul, resonating with him. Luo Nan was stupefied for nearly 5 seconds before waking up as if he had just woken up from a dream. He unleashed the senses of his soul cloak to lock onto Ruo Wen's position, but there was nothing under his senses. Luo Nan's soul was about to freeze in that instant. Chapter 6:10. The region where the oscillation occurred was located 400 meters away. It was extremely easy to distinguish whether it was through mental senses or naked eye observation. Luo Nan could see that the surrounding clouds were roiling and opening up in that region. No matter how fiercely the astral winds pushed the clouds, they were unable to fill up the small, irregular cavity that was 3 meters in diameter. The cavity itself was like a hole that had been forcibly cut open. There were even a few warped threads of light hanging from it. This feeling of disorder extended out from the hole. The light in the surroundings of the cavity was clearly warped, suffused with a faint scarlet light. It was a bit similar to the light that seeped through the gaps between the clouds, but it had a more substantial feeling. This formed a region that was clearly different from the surrounding void. It was indescribably strange. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. His mental senses had turned into a mass of chaos after the hole was broken. It was like when he had just started out and encountered a powerful B-rank. The relevant region was disturbed into a complete mess, a vast expanse of fog. Moreover, this irregular cavity was rapidly shrinking at an obvious rate. When Luo Nan discovered it, it was approximately 3 meters in diameter. In the 1 second it took for him to rush over, it had already shrunk by at least a quarter. And the speed at which it was shrinking was growing faster and faster. What was that? Luo Nan's mind was a mess. There were only questions and no answers. And at this time, his other sensing method, his sealed system, grasped the whereabouts of Ruo Wen, the unfixed star. She was on the other side. She was within the hollow region. That was the best answer. The irregular cavity continued to shrink. Luo Nan simply didn't think of anything else. His water vapor figure flashed and he directly passed through the hole, throwing himself into the boundless and immeasurable cavity. A thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind the instant he entered the cavity. Was I too impulsive? The tiny stray thoughts were completely drowned out by the treacherous and oppressive scene before his eyes in the blink of an eye. The pressure within this irregular cavity was extremely astonishing. The water vapor figure formed by the interference of his soul body evaporated into nothingness the instant he entered the cavity. Luo Nan nimbly withdrew all forms of mental and material interference, but he soon discovered that it really was like he had crashed into a region covered in fog. Everything was a vast expanse of gray. What about the light outside? Before Luo Nan could get used to it, countless twisted and complex structural fragments stimulated his mental senses. It didn't matter if they were meaningful or meaningless, understandable or incomprehensible, willing or unwilling to receive, they all transformed into an immeasurably terrifying flow of information. They flowed along the sensory channels he habitually spread out, and they were fed back one after another. They poured into his soul, filling it to the point where it was off the charts. Structural fragment. Luo Nan was only able to extract this abstract word from the chaotic and berserk information. Then he was smashed into stupefaction by the devastating impact of the information. Under this assault, Luo Nan's sensing range was compressed and compressed, refined and refined, shielded and shielded, but he was still unable to resist the pressure of the terrifying flow of information. In the blink of an eye, the range of his spiritual senses had shrunk to less than 3 meters in diameter, and it was still shrinking. He felt so dizzy that he even lost control of his out-of-body soul until he hit a seemingly gray, tangible barrier. Luo Nan woke up with a start. This gray and hazy barrier looked like a curtain that was pieced together from countless messy fabrics at first glance. It was even like a wall of fog that didn't have any substance. But when Luo Nan truly came into contact with it, he was able to sense that it was a special creation that was formed from countless complex and chaotic structures. Luo Nan's perception and thoughts had already been severely warped and compressed. He was temporarily unable to distinguish what this thing was, but he was able to sense the extremely unstable and tyrannical energy vortex above it. It was because of this inadvertent collision that a berserk energy violently surged out from this barrier of unknown origins. His soul body nearly melted within the powerful magnetic field and was consigned to eternal damnation. Even Luo Nan's soul body was stiff. He was barely able to keep his soul from scattering within the powerful and chaotic magnetic field. He slowly adjusted the direction of his thoughts and perception. The essence of the soul body's observation was mental sensing, and Luo Nan himself controlled many types of sensing, ranging from the low end to the high end. He went from constantly interfering with the material plane to pure observation that didn't interfere at all. Luo Nan fully deserved to be called the top master of mental sensing in the inner world. But here, within this gray and hazy mist, Luo Nan was able to switch between many types of observation within this extremely limited space. He piled up the results of his perception observation layer by layer, but the situation before his eyes still didn't have any essential changes. In other words, he was already lost within this gray and hazy maze of fog of unknown origin. F***ck me. Luo Nan couldn't hold back from cursing. Right now he couldn't care about anything else. He just wanted to know where Rui Wen was in such a vile environment. Was she all right? Venting his anger was a bit beneficial. Quite a bit of the fretful and fearful elements had been dumped out, and his mind became a bit more clear. More importantly, he looked within his mind and confirmed once more that Rui Wen's star was still within the sealed system. It was radiating a scorching splendor. Her specific location. She's so close. Luo Nan and Rui Wen's consciousness completed an even higher level of connection at this moment. Luo Nan subconsciously called out, Rui Wen. The dusky mist barrier in front of Luo Nan was the strange creation barrier that nearly caused Luo Nan to melt within the powerful magnetic field. It suddenly fluctuated, and its entire structure seemed to be collapsing. Its density dropped at a rapid pace, and then it collapsed and dispersed into a mass of misty smoke. Luo Nan confirmed that there was a buzzing, vibrating sound ringing out in front of him. Countless meaningful and meaningless structural fragments were being unfastened and unhooked. Some of them disintegrated without a sound. Some of them were dragging along faintly discernible electric flames. They were even like blades grinding against each other. The area in front of him was still dangerous enough to make one shiver with fear. But there was a slender figure in the depths of the gray and hazy mist, going from blurry to clear. She gradually approached until she arrived in front of him. Rui Wen. Luo Nan instinctively reached out to touch her, but he forgot that his water vapor human form had already collapsed. He touched nothing in an instant. In the end, Rui Wen still stopped incomparably real before his eyes. Her cheeks were fine, but the clothes on her shoulders, chest, waist, legs, and other areas were inexplicably torn. Especially the area above her left knee. There was a piece of cloth that simply disappeared, revealing the fine white and powerful muscles of her leg. Rui Wen seemed to know that she had gotten herself into trouble. She buried her head even deeper. Only now did Luo Nan discover that it was his turn to get angry when he saw her in this state. But in this mist maze where danger lurked on every side, he saw Rui Wen standing alive and well before him. There was no emotion that could compare to the joy of reunion. So he was completely unable to find the dignity of a parent. He could only ask over and over again, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Rui Wen shook her head almost imperceptibly. Then she whispered, "It's too deep. I can't reach it." Chapter 6:11. There are many layers here. They affect each other. And then. Traveling through space will cause interference. The resonance frequency must form a concordant interval in order to eliminate it. Concordant interval. Luo Nan and Rui Wen spent quite a bit of effort to communicate. The little girl's ability to express herself was a bit problematic. Her vocabulary was limited. It was probably because she had recently learned the guitar from Moya. She even interspersed proper terms from the field of music. In the end, Luo Nan had a superficial understanding of music theory. He knew that the concordant interval was a musical interval that sounded pleasing to the ear. It was a musical relationship that was relatively harmonious in the auditory impression. Rui Wen made an analogy. For the time being, Luo Nan didn't know whether it was appropriate or not. He understood the gist of it. You're saying that the resonance frequency of your body and soul fusion must form a harmonious relationship with the multi-layered structure of space and time. Just like the chord of the guitar in order to guarantee precision? Rui Wen furrowed her eyebrows. It's not enough. Why? Hold on. Let me guess. You just said that it's too deep. I can't reach it. Are you saying that there are too many layers of the structure of space and time? It's like a guitar doesn't just have 6 strings, but 16, 17, or even more. It's super complicated to completely control it. It's impossible to play a tune. The metaphors of the two could be said to be a mess, but this kind of communication method was actually quite useful. Rui Wen gaped. Perhaps she lacked confidence in her ability to express herself. In the end, she just nodded her head lightly, indicating that this was what she meant. Excellent. Excellent. Luo Nan's doubts were resolved. Plus, Rui Wen was perfectly fine before his eyes. Luo Nan felt much more at ease. His mind spun all the more nimble, and his train of thought became clearer. In the current situation, he needed to ensure that he and Rui Wen were safe and sound. He needed to determine where in the world this misty labyrinth was. He also needed to figure out why such a situation would appear in the cloud world. The normal structure of space and time had yet to be penetrated. There was a layer of logic hidden within. It could be seen that the cloud world itself was abnormal. The cloud world. Luo Nan wasn't the least bit surprised to encounter this scene. He discovered early on that the cloud world was completely different from the local space and time of Earth. The first stop of the Soul Cloak's expansion was the cloud world, half a month ahead of Earth. But now, the Soul Cloak was about to cover the entire Earth, while the cloud world had yet to be touched. In Luo Nan's understanding, the cloud world was like an infinite replication of the misty scene. It formed an incomparably vast maze. Now, although he had stumbled into another fog maze and felt that it was also full of danger, compared to the surface phenomenon that he could not figure out at all, there seemed to be more opportunities and starting points for him to explore. Rui Wen, do what you did just now. Rui Wen was becoming more and more obedient right now. She would do whatever Luo Nan said. Under Luo Nan's command, she displayed her technique once more. It was as if she was playing a guitar. She gently plucked at the incorporeal chords in the void, clearing a temporary passageway within the dusky mist. The essence of what the little girl was doing was still based on the foundation of body and soul. She resonated with the structure of the void and achieved the unity of the inside and the outside. However, during this process, she adopted a more advanced and exquisite technique. She found fragments that could resonate harmoniously in space-time structures of different frequencies and avoided the relevant conflicts. Thus, she opened up a passage in the complicated structure environment. Unfortunately, the passage was drowned out by the surrounding fog in less than 2 or 3 breaths. Well done. Luo Nan didn't care how long the passage lasted or where it led. Instead, he seized the opportunity to fiercely praise Rui Wen. No matter what, he had to pull the little girl out of her depressed and remorseful mood first. Moreover, Rue Wen's miraculous methods really did give Luo Nan a good entry point. It also gave him a gap to catch his breath. Luo Nan had yet to condense his water vapor human form under the ever-present pressure of the misty maze. He could only barely maintain the narrow range of his mental senses. This lasted until Rue Wen plucked the cords and the mist before his eyes dispersed. The surrounding pressure clearly loosened and dropped. Luo Nan finally found an opportunity. He shouted to himself, "I." This "I" was not the "I" from before. The form, sound, and meaning didn't match. But Luo Nan's goal was clear. He borrowed this chance to visualize the mysterious "I" character. His mind naturally congregated. Then he used the pure observation mode to comb and adjust his mental senses anew. He re-established the large coordinate system. He slowly but surely seeped into the impermanent gathering and scattering mist. He recalled his previous experiences, including today's observations and the results of his earlier observations. He formed a basic judgment regarding the logic and mysteries of the misty maze and even the cloud world. This place is the accumulation of many configuration fragments. Rue Wen looked at him attentively. The distance between the mental plane and the material plane did not affect her clairvoyance. She was like a well-behaved elementary school student, earnestly listening to her teacher's lecture. Luo Nan felt a bit ashamed. He had only been able to strip away the clues within by relying on Rue Wen's miraculous methods. What he was doing right now was nothing more than a theoretical derivation and conclusion. Luo Nan continued to observe the changes in the misty maze, especially the dissociation, friction, and reconstruction of those shattered structures in the depths of the mist. These were the configuration fragments he speculated about. They were like countless catkins floating in the air. They came and went with the wind, hugging together randomly to form all sorts of hairy balls. It was just that the internal structure mechanism was hundreds of millions of times more complex. Due to its complexity, a portion of this random structure process was successful. Perhaps it was meaningful. There was also a considerable portion that failed. Perhaps it was meaningless. But regardless of whether these structures were meaningful or meaningless, they all seemed to revolve and pile up under some sort of mechanism. They formed a boundless misty environment of varying thicknesses and densities. Even the density was different. Then this complex maze was constructed. And if one were to push a layer deeper, the misty maze is like this. Perhaps the cloud world outside is like this as well. It's just that its operations are more concealed. If it weren't for your fleshly body traveling through the void and causing a huge commotion, you wouldn't have been able to see through this layer of cover. I couldn't see through it. Gong Qi also couldn't see through it. Rue Wen stared fixedly at him. Her appearance made Luo Nan want to reach out and stroke her hair. Unfortunately, he was unable to do so for the time being. He could only continue to reason. In this way, we can make a hypothesis. This misty maze is an even deeper region of the cloud world. If the cloud world is a display, a projector, an output that is like a scene between reality and fantasy, then this place might be the mainframe. The wiring and whatnot looks extremely messy, but if we follow the clues and search, we will always find the CPU. Am I right? Rue Wen was silent. Her brows were even slightly furrowed. It seemed that she was doing her best to understand and ponder. She looked extremely cute. Chapter 6:12. There's something. It's only normal to have something. Since this misty labyrinth was the host, possessing its own operating laws and rules, then it was normal to have a CPU hidden deep within. However, Luo Nan was unable to guess what this CPU looked like. He asked Rue Wen, but he did not receive an accurate answer. Rue Wen just shook her head. I can't see it. It's normal that you can't see it. Luo Nan's large coordinate system was doing its best to expand its range, but its progress was still slow. It had not expanded beyond 10 meters to this day. This was the law of order of the Misty Labyrinth. It suppressed the external order frame with Luo Nan at its core. Luo Nan was mentally prepared for this. He just asked Rui Wen in passing, "How far can you see?" Rui Wen did not immediately respond. Instead, she furrowed her brows once more. It seemed that this simple answer exceeded the scope of her ability to express herself. Yes. Is the environment very complicated? Luo Nan was a bit surprised at first, but he soon reacted. Rui Wen's ability to express herself was a bit bad, but she certainly had no problems with basic concepts like length and distance. The Misty Labyrinth's complexity was certainly beyond imagination for her to be able to make things difficult for him. Sure enough, Rui Wen quickly nodded. Oh, the eyes are the most important prerequisite. Ever since Luo Nan entered the inner world, he had always used his mental senses first. He had the advantage of information, and he had been successful in every endeavor. Now that he was affected, he would be out of sorts. His thoughts naturally turned in this direction. Of course, the reason why he was thinking this way was because he already had a decision in mind. Luo Nan saw that Rui Wen did not quite understand his meaning, so he explained the current situation of the large coordinate system being suppressed. He also took the opportunity to explain how he should deal with it. Luo Nan would feel that he had lost out if he did not properly utilize such an outstanding listener. It's not enough to rely solely on the large coordinate system to solve this problem. The basic mode of operation of my large coordinate system is to use my own order frame as the standard. I use my own extraordinary domain to forcefully replace the natural order of other spacetime structures. It's fine if it's purely observation. It's nothing more than a label conversion. But if I carry out mental and material interference, it's the same as going head-on against the order of the entire spacetime structure. However, in actual operation, we can use more advanced and ingenious methods to bypass this obstacle. Do you know what that method is? Luo Nan was about to announce the answer, but he didn't expect Rui Wen to actually open her mouth and answer after a short period of thought, coupling. Oh, right. Luo Nan was both happy and surprised. How did you guess? You said it before. I said it before. Luo Nan's mind spun a few times. He finally remembered that he had given Rui Wen a proper introduction to the subtleties of coupling theory before he entered the cloud world. At that time, he was only half venting and did not expect Rui Wen to fully understand. However, it seemed that Rui Wen already had a basic understanding of coupling theory. When how. He when yang, when God. When not to, when to when like. It was based on a controllable order frame. Through effective design, it would form a coupling with multiple other order frames to form a set of gears to guide the direction of power. To put it simply, it's using order to guide order. According to the virtual brain system's explanation, this is a type of basic yet high-end configuration thinking. Luo Nan naturally entered a state of unceasing torrent when he spoke about this aspect of theory. At this time, he wasn't just giving Rui Wen a lecture or showing off. Instead, he was seizing the opportunity to organize his thoughts. The laws of order in this misty maze are suppressing me greatly. But we have to see that it is still very straightforward compared to the cloud world outside and the local spacetime on Earth. Most of its pressure is on the surface. The interference and pressure of the misty maze was definitely far above the cloud world and the local spacetime. But from another perspective, purely using the controllability of the rules of order as the standard, the corresponding difficulty coefficient should be arranged like this from top to bottom: local spacetime, cloud world, mist maze. Based on Luo Nan's current insight and knowledge, The structure of the local spacetime where Earth was located was established on the basis of organic unity between the extremely large macroscopic and the extremely small microscopic. Simply speaking, the intrinsic structure had already exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's perception. If it weren't for the magical effects of the mysterious character, in addition to the warping of the cloud world and local spacetime, Luo Nan might not have been able to produce an intuitive understanding of the corresponding structure. What's more, the structure of local spacetime was purely based on matter. It formed its own laws and rules. The position of extraordinary power was extremely awkward. Most of the time, Luo Nan was in a predicament of being like a mouse pulling a tortoise with nowhere to start. The cloud world was a bit better. At the very least, the spacetime structure had faintly discernible traces of processing. It gave one the bare minimum of imagination. But if one really wanted to start, one would know just by looking at Gong Chi's fate. In comparison, the mist maze displayed a scene. The mechanism and structure of the mist gathering and dispersing was admittedly exquisite and extraordinary, but the majority of its scale was still within the scope of Luo Nan's observation. The dust-like structure fragments clearly had a very close relationship with the CPU, in the depths of the structure. This gave Luo Nan a very good entry point. Consider the self. Consider the environment. Consider the framework of compromise between the self and the environment. Whether it's in formatting theory, configuration theory. Fine, even on the level of traditional philosophy, this is one of the most essential rules. The difference lies in the specific implementation methods and methods. I've put quite a bit of effort into this recently. Luo Nan was still chattering on endlessly. He talked about how he would use coupling theory to build a fog lamp that was more suitable for long-distance observation on top of the soul cloak. Don't blame him for chattering. The surrounding mist that gathered and dispersed irregularly, as well as the configuration fragments that formed the mist, revealed a myriad of shapes and forms. They gave him far too much stimulation and inspiration. Even though a considerable portion of these dust-like configuration fragments no longer possessed any structural significance, they still had an enormous base to support them. They still displayed astonishing diversity. Just from the range of 10 meters that Luo Nan was currently able to observe, a conservative estimate was that the number of flying, gathered, and dispersed configuration fragments would exceed 100 million. Even if the vast majority of them were destroyed, the remaining ones could be divided into at least 10 major categories according to the discrimination theory of the virtual brain system. There were 300 to 400 specific structures, and there were countless variations. The more Luo Nan probed, the more he couldn't extricate himself. For a beginner like him, this was the most extensive and most vivid living example. He could verify, he could practice, and he could temper himself as a reference. With these examples, the concise and dry theoretical descriptions on the user's manual seemed to come alive. They could manifest on the plane of reality at any time. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.